Chapter 459. At the martial arts exhibition, Zhang Xiaohua had felt that Chang Gung was a kind and amiable monk. However, when she heard that when the Misty School was destroyed, Chang Gung also appeared on the Misty Peak and dealt with the people of the Misty School, her impression of him was immediately replaced by that of a wolf in sheep's clothing. Now that she thought of this, she wondered if she should go to the Dalan Temple and ask him to fulfill his promise. If he did not admit it, she would be surrounded by a few young monks and a few old monks. Even if she had 3 heads and 6 arms, she might not be a match for them. Well, before she had absolute confidence, she had better not pluck the tiger's whiskers. There is still some time before the appointed time with Nie Qianyu, so Zhang Xiaohua did not want to waste time. She returned to the elixir chamber and sat cross-legged on the futon, carefully comprehending the rabbit talisman in her mud pill palace. Although the rabbit talisman was one of the talismans of the entire outer formation of the elixir heart, the 365 incantations of the talisman itself formed a formation. Previously, when she had just learned dozens of incantations, her attainment in the formation had improved by leaps and bounds. If she could learn more than 300 incantations, she could be considered to have a small achievement in the formation. Moreover, Zhang Xiaohua was also looking forward to it. Firstly, he wanted to combine the 365 incantations with a refining technique to make the rabbit jade talisman. He didn't know what kind of special effect it would have. Secondly, he wanted to make each incantation into a jade talisman. If he used the 365 jade talismans to set up a formation, would he be able to set up a powerful formation? These guesses could only be made after she finished comprehending all the incantations. The time for cultivation passed very quickly. Zhang Xiaohua was immersed in the pleasure of comprehending the incantations. With a thought, she released her divine sense and saw Nie Qianyu walking into the elixir chamber with a smile on her face. A wry smile appeared on Zhang Xiaohua's face. Cultivating in the mortal world was truly not an easy task. She faintly felt that the reason why she did not want to meddle in other people's business for a period of time might be related to cultivation. Looking up at the elixir chamber, Zhang Xiaohua found nothing wrong. She stood up and went to greet her. He ran into Nie Qianyu at the entrance of the elixir chamber. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua coincidentally walking to the door, Nie Qianyu felt very strange and asked, "Brother Ren, you're so amazing. It seems that every time I come to find you, you coincidentally walk to the door." "Oh, it's true. In the attic in the peach forest, and here, it's true," Zhang Xiaohua secretly said. "Isn't that nonsense? I only came out because I saw you coming. Sigh, but this is too obvious." However, he could only say, "Well, this young master had a sudden impulse and went to take a look at the entrance. I didn't expect to meet you here." Nie Qianyu curled her lips and said, "Every time he does it on a whim? Then Big Brother Ren's vigor is too vigorous. He's a young man after all. His qi and blood are abundant. There's nothing I can do about it. Besides, and what?" Nie Qianyu said playfully, "Did you feel that it was time for me to arrive, so you came to the door to welcome me?" This, Zhang Xiaohua was somewhat speechless. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua didn't say anything, Nie Qianyu thought that Zhang Xiaohua was a little shy. She also lowered her head slightly and said softly, "Big Brother Ren, I'm just the same. I felt that you were waiting for me at the door, so I hurried over." Her last words were so soft that they couldn't be heard. Zhang Xiaohua's heart, which had been tempered by the immortal cultivation method, suddenly jumped. She hurriedly changed the topic and said, "Little fish Nya, you came so early today. Why didn't you bring any medicinal herbs? Don't tell me you want us to go and pick them together?" Zhang Xiaohua changed the topic. Nie Qianyu's expression was a little sad, but then she smiled and said, "I wanted to go with Ren Xiaoxia, but how could I trouble Ren Xiaoxia to do it himself? Last night, Father specially found a few disciples to help him pick the herbs." "Oh," Zhang Xiaohua was astonished. "So it's like this. Won't we be able to familiarize ourselves with the growth of the herbs if we pick them ourselves?" Nie Qianyu shook her head and said, "Growing medicinal herbs is also a kind of knowledge. Otherwise, Senior Marshal Brother Fei, he wouldn't have to manage the herb garden alone. Wouldn't it be a waste of time if we were to pick the herbs? It's better to refine the pills directly. Although Zhang Xiaohua didn't quite agree with her opinion, she realized that her time was limited. After thousands of years of accumulation, Rejuvenation Valley had countless medicinal pills. She didn't know how many there were. If she refined a few pills a day, she didn't know if she could finish refining them before the people from the Cult of Fragrance arrived. Thus, she didn't express any more opinions. Nie Qinyu walked into the pill room and sniffed. Big brother run. The smell of sealwort in the pill room is very strong. Did you succeed in refining the fasting pill yesterday? Zhang Xiaohua said disdainfully. Look at what you're saying. How could Xiao fail to refine such a simple fasting pill? You're looking down on me too much. Nie Qinyu looked at the cauldron in the groove and walked forward. She took out the box at the bottom of the cauldron and looked at the medicinal powder inside. She said with a smile, Ren Xiaoxia said that we forgot to put the fasting pill into the porcelain bottle. I'm afraid that a lot of the medicinal efficacy will be lost after a night. Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. She asked, will the medicinal efficacy of the fasting pill, which was refined using a complete pill formula, also disappear very quickly? Nie Qinyu nodded. Big brother doesn't refine many pills, so I'm afraid you don't know. It's not just the fasting pill that's like this. It's the same for the other pills. After refining, the pills must be refined as soon as possible and placed in the porcelain bottle. If they're spread out like this, they'll lose their medicinal efficacy very easily. After she finished speaking, she took out a small porcelain bottle from her bosom and poured all the powder in the box into it. She then said, however, the medicinal efficacy of these pills that Big Brother Ren refined using the ancient method is 50% better than the ones refined by Rejuvenation Valley. Even if the medicinal powder is spread out for a night, it should be similar to the ones refined by Rejuvenation Valley. While they were talking, a few disciples came to the pill room and placed a large pile of clean medicinal herbs on the ground. They stood there and waited for instructions. Nie Qinyu looked at Zhang Xiaohua and ordered the disciples to leave the pill room first. They were not allowed to enter without instructions. After the disciples left, Nie Qinyu said, Big brother run. Today we'll refine the all-dispelling pill, New Snow pill, Tianqiao pill, Plum Tongue pill, and Jinlu pill. These pills are recorded in the pill formula that I gave you yesterday. Take a look. When should we start? Zhang Xiaohua took out the pill formula and looked at each pill one by one. She said with a smile, then let's start now. I think the steps of refining these pills are similar to those of the fasting pill. There's no need to hesitate. Nie Qinyu said, that's great. Big brother run, I'll watch from the side. If there's anything I don't know, I'll ask you. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask me immediately. What do you think? Zhang Xiaohua nodded secretly. According to Valley Master Nie's intention, she wanted Nie Qinyu to guide her in refining pills. Nie Qinyu said that because she was worried about her reputation, she only said that it was a competition. She was really a sensible girl. Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile, that's great. If I do anything wrong, you can tell me. Nie Qinyu nodded and said, Big brother run, you don't have to be afraid of making mistakes. These medicinal herbs are made in triplicate, enough for you to refine 3 times. If it's not enough, you can let the disciples pick them. Zhang Xiaohua said with satisfaction, no need. I think 3 portions are enough. Then, she walked to the side of the cauldron and turned on the earth fire. She looked at Nie Qinyu and said, then I'll start. Nie Qinyu also nodded and said, then let's start. After saying that, she was about to help Zhang Xiaohua separate the medicinal herbs. Zhang Xiaohua quickly stopped her and said, let me do this. You can't always accompany me in refining pills. After saying this, she regretted it. It was too ambiguous. Sure enough, Nie Qinyu lowered her head slightly and did not answer. Zhang Xiaohua quickly separated the medicinal herbs for the all-dispelling pill and threw them aside. She slowly adjusted the flame until the cauldron was hot. When Zhang Xiaohua was about to put in the medicinal herbs, Nie Qinyu summoned the courage to look up and carefully watched Zhang Xiaohua's skillful movements. The refining of the all-dispelling pill was similar to that of the fasting pill. In a short time, Zhang Xiaohua had finished refining the all-dispelling pill. Nie Qinyu was a little surprised to see Zhang Xiaohua refining the all-dispelling pill so easily. Yesterday, when she saw Zhang Xiaohua controlling the temperature of the cauldron, she was still a little unfamiliar. She was worried that Zhang Xiaohua would accidentally burn the medicinal herbs today, but now it seemed that she was even more skillful than yesterday. How about you burn the pills? Seeing Zhang Xiaohua handing over the square box, Nie Qinyu woke up from her dream and hurriedly asked the disciples outside to come in and collect the pills in a porcelain bottle. Then, she hurriedly prepared to put in the second set of medicinal herbs, but was stopped by Zhang Xiaohua with a wave of her hand. Zhang Xiaohua said, "Let's put the rest of the herbs aside. I'll think about it in the afternoon. Let's refine other pills first." After he finished speaking, he rushed to take out a few medicinal herbs for the new snow pill. However, this time, he did not take 1/3 of the amount, but more than half of it. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's actions, Nie Qinyu's lips curled into an imperceptible smile. She thought to herself, Big Brother Run is indeed a wonderful person. He knew that Father sent a disciple over to take away the pills that he refined. Before I could say anything, he had already sent more than half of the pills over. Presumably, some of the pills on the ground were left for himself after he refined them in the afternoon. Sure enough, it was as Nie Qinyu thought. Zhang Xiaohua did not leave any of the medicinal dregs for the new snow pill and had the Rejuvenation Valley disciples put them all into porcelain bottles. Seeing this, Nie Qinyu nodded continuously to herself. Zhang Xiaohua became more and more proficient in refining. Later on, she was practically refining pills with her eyes closed. The sun outside the pill room was just hanging above her head. The few pills that Nie Qinyu had prepared to refine today were all refined by Zhang Xiaohua. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua clap her hands and call a day, Nie Qinyu said apologetically, "Big Brother Run, I thought that since it was the first time refining today, we would have to discuss it. In the end, you didn't even ask a single question and finished refining all the pills. I see that your technique is very skillful and almost exactly the same as described in the book." Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, "Practice makes perfect. If you have vigorous inner strength and have mastered the method that I mentioned last time, there shouldn't be any problems." Nie Qinyu smiled bitterly. "It's a pity that I don't have such vigorous inner strength." Then she smiled. "What plans do you have for finishing so early today?" As she said this, there was a slight expectation in her eyes. "Recommend me." Chapter 460. Zhang Xiaohua thought for a while and said, "Little fish Nie, it's still early. I want to carefully recall the pill refining technique just now and think about the experience of refining the all-dispelling pill, new snow pill, etc. When I have time in the future, I'll accompany you to pick herbs. How about that?" Nie Qinyu forced a smile and said, "It's okay, Big Brother Ren. You cultivate first. I'll go back and prepare. Tomorrow, I'll bring more herbs and more pill formulas. I'm sure not only you, but also Father will be very happy." After that, her eyebrows hung with disappointment, and she hurriedly left with the disciples. Looking at Nie Qinyu's small and thin figure gradually disappearing, Zhang Xiaohua had an indescribable feeling in her heart. She sighed and closed the door of the pill refining room. The herbs for refining the pills had already been divided. After Zhang Xiaohua sat down, she took out the pill furnace. After calming her heart, she began to use the immortal alchemy technique to refine the pills just now. Not to mention Zhang Xiaohua, Nie Qinyu returned to the outer valley with a bit of bitterness and brought a few disciples to the hall where Valley Master Nie presided over the affairs of the valley. Valley Master Nie had just finished dealing with some things and was resting with his eyes closed. He was carefully pondering over the techniques that Zhang Xiaohua had given him. When he heard the footsteps and saw that it was Nie Qinyu, he was very surprised and asked, "Little you, why are you here? Aren't you going to the inner valley to teach Ren Xiaoyao the refining method of the pills today?" Nie Qinyu saw her father's concerned look and felt very uncomfortable. She pursed her lips and said, "How can I teach him? He's very powerful." Seeing that his daughter was angry, Valley Master Nie walked forward and smiled. It seems that this Ren Xiaoyao made you angry. What's going on? Tell me. Nie Qinyu didn't speak. She found a chair and sat down. She drank 2 mouthfuls of tea and said angrily, "Why would I be angry? I'm not angry at all." Okay, don't be angry. Valley Master Nya seemed to be very patient and said, "Then you have to tell father clearly so that I can settle the score with that kid." Settle accounts? Nie Qinyu looked at Valley Head Nya and said, "If you knew, why would you still look for Big Brother Ren? Wouldn't you be worshipping him?" Hearing Nie Qinyu say the words Big Brother Run, Valley Master Nya knew that his daughter was slightly happy. He then pretended to be curious and asked, "Then tell me, why do I have to worship him?" Seeing that her father was interested, Nie Qinyu asked, "Father, do you know why I came back so early?" When Valley Master Nye heard this, he muttered in his heart, "Didn't I ask this question from the start? Also, is there any difference between this question and the previous one?" However, he still looked at his daughter dotingly and asked in surprise, "Why? Little you, tell me about it." Seeing her father's astonishment, Nye Qinyu's gloominess dissipated. She said proudly, "Father, you don't know. I prepared 5 to 6 ingredients for the elixir today, thinking that it would be enough for today's use. However, I never expected that Big Brother Run could refine each elixir perfectly without any mistakes." Valley Master Nya was also surprised and said, "When I saw him yesterday, his technique was still very rough. It didn't seem like he had refined elixirs before. Could it be that he became an expert just yesterday?" Nye Qinyu smiled. "That's right. The elixir recipes I gave him yesterday were all similar to the fasting elixir. The refining techniques were also similar. That's why he was able to refine the elixir so smoothly. Yes, even if that's the case, it's still extremely rare." "Oh, that's right. Father, Big Brother Ren refined most of the herbs into elixirs and gave them to me to bring back." Valley Master Nye frowned and asked, "Didn't you say that he would take half?" "Yes, that's what I originally said. However, Big Brother Ren didn't ask for the freshly refined elixirs. He only left a few herbs and said that he would refine them in the afternoon. It's considered a share. Sigh, this child is really benevolent. It seems that he really just wants to learn alchemy. Thinking about it, I still asked for half of the elixirs from him yesterday. That's right. Father, look at how magnanimous Big Brother Run is. He didn't even look at the quality of the elixirs and let me bring them back. Haha, little Yu still has good eyesight. Father is getting old." Nye Qinyu smiled slightly with a little shyness in her eyes and said, "Father, don't you want to take a look at the elixirs refined by Big Brother Run?" Valley Master Nye stopped smiling and nodded. "Of course I have to take a good look. I have already seen the blood-replenishing elixir that he refined yesterday. With the same amount, the medicinal properties are more than 5 times stronger than the elixirs that we refined ourselves. I don't know if the elixirs refined today are the same." Nye Qinyu waved her hand, and several disciples behind her brought up their porcelain bottles and then left the hall. Valley Master Nye casually took a porcelain bottle and opened it. A strong medicinal fragrance rushed out. Valley Master Nye took a sniff and exclaimed, "This is the new snow elixir? How can the medicinal properties be so strong? It smells more than 5 times stronger than the elixirs that we refined ourselves." Nye Qinyu said with a smile, "Father, this is just a sniff. If you study it carefully, I feel that it is at least 7 times stronger." Valley Master Nye did not doubt Nye Qinyu's judgment at all. He sealed the porcelain bottle and opened the other porcelain bottles. He sniffed them one by one and even poured out some medicinal powder from a few bottles to see and taste with his own eyes. When he finished sealing the porcelain bottles, his face had already revealed an expression of disbelief and surprise. He looked at Nye Qinyu and asked, "Little Yu, did you see Ren Xiaoyao personally refine these elixirs with your own eyes?" Nye Qinyu nodded solemnly and said, "Yes, I saw it with my own eyes. Big Brother Ren personally refined them." Good. Valley Master Nye's face was full of 3 good words. He praised with a smile, "We really picked up a treasure. No. He's the savior of our rejuvenation valley." When Nye Qinyu heard this, her face was also full of smiles. She said, "Congratulations, Father. If there is no problem with the cultivation method that Big Brother Ren taught you, Father will be able to revive Rejuvenation Valley in a few months' time and reappear the ancient method of refining elixirs in the world. Valley Master Nya was also happy. He said, "Congratulations to you two. Little you, this is all thanks to you. Although you encountered a disaster on this long trip, you also turned misfortune into blessing. You even brought back such a great opportunity for Rejuvenation Valley." Then he sighed and said, "The rarest thing is that not only did Nephew Rin save you, he also imparted such an important cultivation method to you. This kindness, it will be difficult for Rejuvenation Valley to repay." Nye Chinyu said, "Father, you are thinking too much. Do you think Big Brother Ren is the kind of person who would ask for repayment?" Valley Master Nye shook his head and said, "When he saved you back then, he did not ask for a reward at all. He also did not ask for a reward when he took over the arena of the marriage by martial arts competition. He also did not ask for a reward when he imparted the cultivation method of refining elixirs to me. Is there really such a person in this world who does not care about himself and only cares about others?" Puffed. Nye Chinyu almost laughed out loud. She said, "If it was someone else, I might believe it. But if it is Big Brother Ren, I will not believe it even if you beat me to death." When she finished speaking, she told Valley Master Nye about some of the interesting things that happened along the way. Moreover, she took out the gold that she obtained from the peach forest outside Sorrow City and showed it to Valley Master Nye. She then said, "I reckon that this guy has forgotten about this gold. Otherwise, he would have asked me for it long ago." "I see." Valley Master Nye did not know whether to laugh or cry. The image of Zhang Xiaohua in his heart immediately collapsed, and she became a living person. Then, "Little you, should we also prepare some gold and silver for him?" Valley Master Nye probed. "Don't. Why should we give it to him? He didn't ask for it." "Father, you don't know that he is greedy for small gains and has never asked for it. If you don't give it to him, he won't want it either. Now that you have asked, he will be very happy. If we don't give it to him, let's see how he will take advantage of it." Hearing Nye Chinyu's words, Valley Master Nye laughed in his heart. Little Yu is obviously angry with him. "Sai, let them handle this kind of thing." He then said, "But if we don't express our gratitude, won't he think that our Rejuvenation Valley is stingy?" After thinking for a while, Nye Chinyu shook her head and said, "It's better not to express our gratitude. To be honest, Big Brother Rin just likes to take advantage of small gains. With his martial arts, what kind of gold and silver can't he get? Moreover, it's still the same sentence. With his temperament, he would definitely be able to obtain some benefits from pill refining. Since he wants to learn pill refining, and we provided him with pill formulas and medicinal herbs, he can't be more than happy. There's no need to express anything, right?" But the pills that he refined were all left in Rejuvenation Valley. He didn't get anything himself. We are the ones who are secretly happy. This, Nye Chinyu was also somewhat speechless. Indeed, Zhang Xiaohua wanted to learn pill refining techniques, but the pill refining technique that she displayed today seemed to be the ancient method of pill refining. She didn't even learn any pill frying technique at all. If she said that she wanted to practice with pills, it didn't seem necessary. What if she wanted to see Rejuvenation Valley's pill formula? Thinking of this, Nye Chinyu couldn't help but glance at Valley Master Nye. Sure enough, Valley Master Nye was also looking at her. The two of them said in unison, "Pill formula. That's the only possibility." Nye Chinyu said, "But before coming to Vow City, I never said that I was from Rejuvenation Valley." Moreover, looking at him, it seemed that he didn't know about Rejuvenation Valley. Valley Master Nye also said thoughtfully, "I've also discussed with your Uncle Yu. We feel that the possibility of this Ran Xiaoyao specifically coming to Rejuvenation Valley is not high. Moreover, the pill formula was something that happened after he took down the challenge arena. It definitely wasn't something that he had planned for a long time. Yes, I'm still at ease with Big Brother Ren's temperament. He's not that kind of person. Yes, that's good." Valley Master Nye thought for a moment and seemed to have made a certain decision. He said to Nye Chinyu, "If that's the case, then let's fulfill his wish and give him all of our Rejuvenation Valley's pill formulas to refine. I'd like to see how big of a surprise this Ren Xiaoyao can bring me." Nie Qianyu was greatly alarmed when she heard this and hurriedly said, "Father, you can't do this." If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.qijian. Chapter 461. Seeing that his daughter was so surprised and even wanted to stop him, Valley Master Nie nodded to himself. This girl hasn't lost her mind yet. Nie Qianyu continued, "Father, are you sure you want to do this? There are a few pill formulas in there that are the treasures of our Rejuvenation Valley. They are the painstaking efforts of several generations of predecessors. Furthermore, the medicinal pills refined from these pill formulas are also treasures that are coveted by many in the martial world. If Big Brother Ren accidentally divulges them, it will bring disaster to our Rejuvenation Valley." Valley Master Nya listened and nodded. "Little you are right. Father is gratified. However, you only saw the first layer and didn't see the depths. Father, please speak. First of all, although this pill recipe is Rejuvenation Valley's secret, it hasn't been refined into pills for thousands of years. Can a pill recipe that can't be refined into pills still be called a pill recipe? Secondly, the pills refined from this pill recipe can only increase one's inner strength and strengthen one's muscles and body. Ren Xiaoyao's martial arts are so powerful that even if he succeeds in refining it, it will only be a step further. Think about it. If he obtains this pill recipe or pill, will he tell others? Also, this kind of elixir is not a secret in the super sections. It has long been a legend in the ordinary Jianghu sections. Even if Ren Xiaoyao leaks it out, he has to first consider his own safety. Rejuvenation Valley is an aristocratic family that specializes in alchemy. It's not surprising that we have this kind of elixir recipe. Moreover, as long as we insist that this elixir recipe is illusory, who can use the 1,000-year-old legend as evidence? Moreover, the super sects won't care about this pill recipe. Why would we be afraid of the ordinary sects? Don't forget that our alliance is also a powerful force in the Jianghu. But what if it's the force that wants to kill my daughter? Then there's even less to be afraid. Ren Xiaoyao escorted you back and ruined their plans. Ren Xiaoyao can't wait to avoid them. Why would he take the initiative to provoke them? Sai, actually, once Father has mastered the cultivation method, we can also refine it ourselves. Why do we have to? Valley Master Nye smiled bitterly and said, although Ren Xiaoyao can use this cultivation method to refine medicinal pills, Father may not be able to succeed. Our Rejuvenation Valley's ancient method of refining medicinal pills has not been refined for thousands of years. The efficacy of medicinal pills is far from what is recorded in the ancient books. If we don't let Ren Xiaoyao help refine it now, there won't be such a shop after this village. In the future, it will be too late for us to regret. Nie Qianyu somewhat understood her father's thoughts. Rejuvenation Valley had always been famous in Jianghu for elixirs and healing. Others thought that Rejuvenation Valley's thousands of years of reputation must have a deep foundation. However, only a few people knew that Rejuvenation Valley's savings in the early years had been exhausted. Many of their elixirs had been lost, and their ancient methods of refining elixirs were extinct. It was far from being as glorious as imagined. If Zhang Xiaohua could refine all of Rejuvenation Valley's elixirs according to the ancient method, not to mention the great impact, it could at least make Rejuvenation Valley's waste a little stronger. Moreover, if Zhang Xiaohua refined Rejuvenation Valley's elixir recipes along the way, it would give Valley Master Nye. No, it should be pointing the way for Rejuvenation Valley's development in the future. Seeing that her father had made up his mind, Nye Qianyu nodded firmly and said, I know, Father. When I need those elixir recipes, I will tell you. Valley Master Nye nodded with a smile. I believe in your vision, little you. His gaze also turned out of the hall, and he said leisurely, I also believe in my vision. In the inner valley, in the elixir room, Zhang Xiaohua was sweating profusely for Rejuvenation Valley. She was continuously casting spells into the elixir furnace. Although there was a flash of fire in the furnace, the surrounding temperature was not too high. Even when the mouth of the furnace was open, there was no trace of heat coming out. Only impurities like flying ash occasionally floated out. The elixir recipes left by Nie Qinyu were all ordinary elixirs. Even if they were to use a martial arts cauldron, it would only take a short while, not to mention an immortal cauldron. Things like incubation and embryo elixir were all done in a flash and did not take too much time. When Nie Qinyu went to the hall to talk to Valley Master Nie, Zhang Xiaohua had already successfully refined half of the elixirs. However, although the process of refining these elixirs was the same, the situation during incubation was somewhat different. When Zhang Xiaohua used her divine sense to observe the all-dispelling elixir and new snow elixir, she could faintly feel the cycle of the 5 elements contained in the elixir. Although the refined elixir was small, it was like yesterday's fasting elixir. Very little of the medicinal power could seep out of the elixir. However, the plum tongue elixir obviously had a huge loophole. Although it was not as obvious as the fasting elixir refined earlier, the difference was also obvious. After a while, she finished refining the remaining medicinal herbs. Zhang Xiaohua pinched a spell and hit a few elixirs of different sizes. Those elixirs floated in front of her. Zhang Xiaohua used her divine sense to observe carefully. A small half of them were actually overflowing with medicinal fragrance. Looking at the other elixirs that were abnormally round and black in color, Zhang Xiaohua frowned slightly. If her guess was correct, the elixirs that could restrain their medicinal power should have all 5 elements. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth could mutually reinforce and restrain each other, forming a small system of their own. They could be called true elixirs. The other elixirs probably lacked 1 or more of the 5 elements and could not form a system of their own. Alas, the majority of Rejuvenation Valley's elixir prescriptions were different from the elixir prescriptions of the Immortal Tao, regardless of whether it was the name or the medicinal herbs. The jade slip that Zhang Xiaohua had obtained only contained elixir refinement techniques. There were only a few detailed records of precious medicinal herbs and drawings inside. The rest were only names. She didn't know if the medicinal herbs had all been lost or if they had all changed their names. There was no doubt that Rejuvenation Valley's elixir prescriptions originated from the Immortal Tao. However, after 10,000 years, perhaps the medicinal herbs had been lost or the names had changed. The elixir prescriptions would also change. The all-dispelling elixir might be because the medicinal herbs' names were the same as before, or perhaps the replacement medicinal herbs found were the same as the original 5 elements, so it could maintain the elixir's 5 elements. The plum tongue elixir was probably not as lucky as the all-dispelling elixir. The replacement medicinal herbs used did not match the 5 elements, or perhaps there was some other reason. Zhang Xiaohua herself couldn't explain it clearly. In short, this elixir prescription was flawed. With a wave of her hand, Zhang Xiaohua placed the elixirs in the air into separate jade bottles and recorded the insights she had just gained into the jade slip. Only then did she raise her head with a trace of confusion in her eyes. With the annihilation of the Immortal Tao, the elixir Tao naturally declined as well. After 10,000 years of changes in inheritance, the original truth was no longer known. She had the art of elixir refinement, but she couldn't find suitable medicinal herbs. What did she do? Moreover, there was another main reason why Zhang Xiaohua wanted to stay in Rejuvenation Valley and use their elixir prescriptions to refine elixirs. There were 2 types of elixir refinement techniques recorded in the jade slip. One was the technique that she was currently using to stimulate the formation to produce elixir fire and refine the elixir. This technique was often used for ordinary elixirs. These elixirs required a short time to refine, had few spells, and didn't have high requirements. The other method was to use an external fire to directly heat the cauldron and produce elixir fire through the cauldron to refine the elixir. This technique was often used for more advanced elixirs. This kind of elixir took a long time to form, often several days, 10 days, or even several hundred days. The spells used were also extremely complicated, and the slightest carelessness would result in failure. Zhang Xiaohua had now mastered the first method of elixir refinement, but was unfamiliar with the second method. She saw that Rejuvenation Valley's method of elixir refinement was very similar to the second method. Moreover, Rejuvenation Valley also had conditions that the outside world didn't have. Thus, she wanted to try to see if she had the opportunity to truly learn the second method of elixir refinement in Rejuvenation Valley. However, the current elixir prescriptions could only be refined using the first method. There was no need for the second method at all. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua got up from the praying mat. Earlier, she had used her divine sense to explore this inner valley. She saw that there were many secluded places in the depths of the inner valley, with dense vegetation and endless streams. The key was that Rejuvenation Valley's vitality was dense. Perhaps there would be rare and precious medicinal herbs inside. These things might not be able to be seen clearly with her divine sense, so she had to go and see for herself. Moreover, since Rejuvenation Valley had elixir prescriptions, it might be some immortal Tao inheritance. If she strolled around inside, she might encounter some by chance. Finished thinking, Zhang Xiaohua formed an incantation with her hand and jumped down. She disappeared in a flash. She didn't even leave the door and directly escaped into the depths of the inner valley. Fortunately, the divine sense technique at the end of God Traction was very useful. Zhang Xiaohua soon arrived at the side of a small stream. Next to the stream was a deep forest. The afternoon sun was already scorching hot, but this place appeared incomparably shady and cool. In front of her was a small hillside. Zhang Xiaohua floated up and stood on the hillside. She looked at several rather neatly repaired small medicinal gardens at the foot of the hillside. Needless to say, these were precious medicinal herbs specially planted by Rejuvenation Valley. Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense swept over and discovered that the speed at which these medicinal herbs absorb vitality was much faster than the surrounding medicinal herbs. The vitality in the air was also much denser. She walked towards the hillside again and bypassed several obstacles. She stopped in front of one of the medicinal gardens and squatted down to carefully examine it. Sure enough, it was a medicinal herb called eroding grass. The name of this medicinal herb in the jade slip was the same as the name in Rejuvenation Valley's book. Although the jade slip didn't have a diagram, the book had a drawing. Moreover, both records were the same. Nature cherishes relies on water. However, the jade slip contained the ingredients for refining the marrow communication pill, while the book contained the main ingredient for the spirit awakening pill. Seeing that this place was already very far from the entrance of the valley, it was a good place for eroding grass to grow. If she reported to Valley Master Nya and then came back to pick it, she would have to work hard. Since Valley Master Nya had already promised her that she could use the medicinal herbs in the inner valley as she pleased, presumably the medicinal herbs that were extremely far away should also be in the inner valley. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua didn't plan on being polite with Valley Master Nya. She took out the refined jade box from her bosom and carefully followed the steps described in the jade slip. She picked several stalks of eroding grass and sealed them in the jade box. Chapter 462. Subsequently, Zhang Xiaohua looked into the distance and visited all the places where precious herbs were planted in the Rejuvenation Valley. She collected some of them and collected them. Although these herbs were not described in the jade slip, they were the main ingredients of some elixirs in the book. If she didn't pick them now, when would she? And it would be a waste not to pick them. She picked them all the way and gradually went deeper into the valley. Gradually, the medicinal garden disappeared and there were more wild plants. The unknown herbs also gradually increased. As Zhang Xiaohua went deeper, the environment gradually became worse. There was almost no way out. The shrubs were half a person's height, and the towering trees needed several people to surround them. The birds became noisier and noisier. From time to time, small animals passed by in the trees, on the ground, and in the water. Zhang Xiaohua only released her divine sense slightly and covered a small area around her. She carefully checked, hoping to have an exciting harvest. While walking, after passing a slope, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly frowned, and her expression became overjoyed. She jumped on a big tree next to her, but she looked a little flustered. About 100 feet in front of Zhang Xiaohua, there was a sunny area. This area was about 10 feet in radius, and there were no weeds, only some bare rocks. There was not even a bit of soil, and in the middle of these rocks, there was a bright red grass. The grass seemed to be able to burn under the sun, constantly emitting a beautiful light. Wasn't this one of the few herbs recorded in the jade slip, the bright sun grass? Zhang Xiaohua really couldn't believe that her luck was so good. When she reached the top of the tree, she pinched her thigh hard, and it was quite painful. It shouldn't be a dream, right? Why did she pinch herself? She had been with little girls like Nie Qianyu for a long time and always listened to their nonsense. How could she dream? Zhang Xiaohua first used her eyes to appreciate the gorgeous scenery of the bright sun grass shrouded in the afterglow of the setting sun. Only then did she cast her divine sense into the bright sun grass. Sure enough, the vitality above the bright sun grass was 3 times more than the eroding grass, and the vitality in the bright sun grass seemed to be extremely terrifying. Yes, Zhang Xiaohua finally confirmed that this was what was recorded in the jade slip. It grew in a place where the yang qi was dominant. There would be no other plants nearby. Even the ordinary soil would be sucked dry by the yang qi in this grass and turned into hard stones. However, the only difference from the jade slip's introduction was that most of the precious herbs in the world would have some accompanying monsters that dutifully guarded them. Accompanying monsters? Zhang Xiaohua had always scoffed at this. It was just a matter of first come, first served, and the one who arrived early would be the first to arrive. But when it came to monsters, Zhang Xiaohua's first reaction was the thing in the lava of the volcano under the deserted island. How could he not be moved? Let's climb the tree first. However, after Zhang Xiaohua finished observing this herb and swept her divine sense into the surroundings, she didn't find anything out of the ordinary. Could it be that this monster was actually able to hide from her divine sense? Thinking of hiding from her divine sense, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but think of the incantation for concealing one's cultivation level. Since human cultivators could create cultivation methods that made others unable to detect their own divine sense and cultivation level, perhaps this demonic beast could also have the same ability. Thus, Zhang Xiaohua once again used all of her divine sense to carefully investigate the area around the bright sun grass within 100 feet. After a long while, she actually didn't find anything. Could it be that this bright sun grass didn't have any accompanying demonic beasts? Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but hit her forehead with her hand, inwardly feeling ashamed. The world's vital energy had undergone a great change 10,000 years ago. Even if there were demonic beasts, they would all hide in places with abundant vital energy, such as the things in the lava. Although this Rejuvenation Valley's vital energy was different from other places, it was still far from meeting the living standards of demonic beasts. How could there be demonic beasts here? In this kind of place lacking vital energy, the bright sun grass couldn't mature. These demonic beasts would have already starved to death. Even if they didn't starve to death, they would have already died of old age. Zhang Xiaohua viciously thought. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua jumped down from the tree and swaggered towards the bright sun grass. However, before she could approach the bright sun grass, a fishy wind suddenly came from the side. Zhang Xiaohua frowned and didn't even turn her head as she sent her divine sense to the right behind her. She saw that several hundred feet away, there was something rapidly running in her direction. It howled as it ran, as if it was warning her of something. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but smile wryly and inwardly say, "I have to go back and have a good talk with Nie Qianyu." The scenery in her Rejuvenation Valley is beautiful and harmonious. Why is she raising such an ugly thing? It's fine if she's raising an odd beast or a small squirrel as a pet. But why is she raising a big white wolf for no reason? You could just be your big bad wolf, but you're still making it white like a big white sheep. You really need to be taught a lesson. It looks like I have to have the people of Rejuvenation Valley properly clean up the valley and reorganize it harmoniously. Alas, this guy really wanted to. How could the disciples of Rejuvenation Valley keep an eye on such a large place? If that was the case, then the bright sun grass would have been taken by the disciples of Rejuvenation Valley long ago. How could it possibly be his turn? The big white wolf let out a low growl and quickly ran over, but Zhang Xiaohua stood there calmly. A rare medicinal herb, like the bright sun grass, needed to be carefully picked without distraction. With the threat of the big white wolf, Zhang Xiaohua naturally wouldn't rashly reach out her hand. Thinking about it, why was she being so cautious just now? If she didn't discover anything with her divine sense, she could have just directly gone up to pick it. Why did she have to carefully inspect it a second time? Wasn't this trouble coming? However, Zhang Xiaohua wasn't nervous when she saw the trouble chasing after her. That's right. Wasn't it just a wild wolf? Even with a white coat, it was still a wolf. It wouldn't be some monster with astonishing strength, and it definitely wouldn't be a martial arts expert with astonishing inner strength. Zhang Xiaohua released her divine sense and locked onto the big white wolf from afar. The big white wolf seemed to have sensed the danger ahead and slowed down slightly. However, it was only a distance of a few dozen meters, so it only took a few breaths for the white wolf to reach the side of the slope. When it reached the slope, the white wolf stopped. It didn't directly pounce over like Zhang Xiaohua had imagined and start a fight. Instead, it used its eyes to stare straight at Zhang Xiaohua and sniff with its nose. Then, it cast its gaze towards the bright sun grass and the sunlight and raised its head to howl. Zhang Xiaohua frowned. Although she hadn't seen a wolf before, she knew that wolves lived in packs. Was this big white wolf howling to summon the wolf pack? She was about to release her divine sense, but at this time, the big white wolf swept its tail on the ground and exerted force with its hind legs. Like a white shadow, it directly pounced toward Zhang Xiaohua. Wow! Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but sigh in her heart. This white wolf actually knows the art of war. First, it warned from afar, then it approached. It only howled to make people think that it was waiting for its companions to come. But the moment people relaxed, it suddenly attacked. Unfortunately, at this time, Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense was everywhere within 100 feet. Although the big white wolf was extremely fast, it was still clearly seen by Zhang Xiaohua. Seeing the white wolf approaching, Zhang Xiaohua could clearly see the unruly look in its eyes. Its two front legs revealed sharp claws. Without a doubt, as long as one was caught by these claws, at least a piece of flesh would be torn off. Not to mention the sharp wolf teeth behind the claws. Zhang Xiaohua was not in a hurry. When the big white wolf came close, she only slightly leaned to the side and let the big white wolf pass. The white wolf didn't have time to turn around in the air, so it swung its tail and slashed towards Zhang Xiaohua's face. Zhang Xiaohua laughed. Is this the legendary tiger tail scissors? When did this big white wolf steal it? Zhang Xiaohua still ignored it. She shrank back and dodged. The white wolf missed its target and landed on the ground. It did not rest, nor did it strike a pose. It turned around and pounced on Zhang Xiaohua again. Zhang Xiaohua did not frown. He thought that since the white wolf was able to protect the sunshine grass, it must have some kind of psychic ability. He had taken the wolf's item for no reason. Even if he did not repay the wolf's kindness, he would not take the wolf's life. So, he didn't want to fight back. He wanted to let the white wolf know the difficulty in retreat. Since it pounced for the second time, Zhang Xiaohua reached out and grabbed the white wolf's front leg from an extremely tricky angle. Then, she leaned to the side and easily used four tails against 1,000 caddies to throw the white wolf far away. The white wolf cried in the air, thinking that it was going to be hurt. In the end, although it was thrown for nearly 100 feet, it still landed steadily on the ground. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua finally had a chance. She used her divine sense to explore the depths of the forest. She didn't see any other wolves. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but feel a little astonished. At this time, the white wolf who was thrown far away didn't run away pathetically like Zhang Xiaohua had expected. Instead, it perked up and pounced towards him. This time, Zhang Xiaohua was really angry. He thought to himself, although this white wolf is handsome, it's not some spiritual thing. I've already spared it twice, and it still doesn't know. Thinking, he grabbed the white wolf's throat, which was pouncing towards him. Although there was a saying, copper head, iron back, hemp waist was the weak point of a wolf. But with Zhang Xiaohua's current strength, why would he care about this? Although his palm wasn't big, but it was very strong when he grabbed the white wolf's huge neck. With just a little bit of strength, the white wolf's tongue stretched out and its throat let out a hoarse and low growl. It seemed to be afraid, unwilling, and begging for mercy. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the big white wolf, which he had picked up single-handedly. Just as he was about to exert more strength, he saw the white wolf's eyes. The ferocious gaze just now had become extremely clear. It seemed to be that kind of sadness, that kind of familiar sadness, the sadness that was deeply imprinted in Zhang Xiaohua's mind. It was the gaze of the cat, which was run over by the horse carriage on the snowy ground outside Pingyang City. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.qijian. Chapter 463. Sigh. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but sigh. Her heart softened for no reason, and she could no longer exert any strength. With a shake of her arm, she flung the white wolf far away. This time, even if this white wolf is stupid, it won't turn back. Zhang Xiaohua thought to herself. Unfortunately, facts often spoke louder than words. That white wolf actually did something that made Zhang Xiaohua's jaw drop. The white wolf actually raised its head and howled again. The sound shook the surroundings, and there was actually a stirring sadness in its voice. After the howl landed, the white wolf once again pounced on Zhang Xiaohua without hesitation. Zhang Xiaohua was thoroughly enraged. What's going on? Is this young grass so important to this white wolf? The jade slip didn't record the effects of the yang grass on monsters. Even if you saw it first, the treasures in this world can only be obtained by the virtuous. Since this young master can see this yang grass, I must be a virtuous person. I've spared your life time and time again, so it can be considered that I've done my utmost benevolence. You're pestering me endlessly. Do you really want to die? Zhang Xiaohua was excited by the white wolf. She was too lazy to think about why the white wolf was behaving like this. She clenched her left hand, gathered 70% of her strength, and directly struck the white wolf's head. At this moment, an angry shout suddenly sounded from afar. You brat, who are you? Eat this old man's dart. After that, a hidden weapon shot towards Zhang Xiaohua like a meteor. Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense had just swept through the forest. She didn't think that someone would come from the valley entrance, so she didn't notice. However, that person didn't ask for a reason and just used the hidden weapon to greet her body. Fortunately, although the hidden weapon was shot from afar, it was still accurate. It was precisely her arm. Presumably, that person only wanted to stop her from killing, but didn't have the intention to take her life. At this point, how could Zhang Xiaohua not know that this person was in cahoots with the big white wolf? The person behind this was the true owner of the yang grass. Alas, who else could be in the depths of this forest other than Rejuvenation Valley's people? It seemed that the flood had reached the Dragon King Temple. Zhang Xiaohua figured out the key point in a flash. She stretched out her left fist and grabbed the big white wolf's front leg. Just like the first time, she threw the big white wolf behind her in the direction of the attacker. Then, she stretched out her hand and easily caught the hidden weapon that was shot at her. It was a gold coin dart. Although the man's roar startled Zhang Xiaohua and she threw out the gold coin dart, his body was still far away. The big white wolf was thrown to the ground by Zhang Xiaohua. He just ran to the white wolf's side. The white wolf landed on the ground. It seemed to have adapted to it and did not panic. With a cheerful howl, it pounced on the man. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua slowly turned around and carefully sized up the person who had just arrived. This was an old man with white hair and a white beard. He wore light blue clothes and held a small hoe in his left hand. His right hand was constantly stroking the white wolf's head, as if he was trying his best to comfort it. However, he stared at Zhang Xiaohua in the distance with a pair of surprised, angry, and puzzled eyes. After thinking for a moment, Zhang Xiaohua felt that she was in the wrong. She took the lead and walked forward. She bowed deeply and was about to speak when the old man did not return the greeting. He said angrily, "Whose sect are you? Why don't I have any impression of you? Don't you know Big White?" Big White? Zhang Xiaohua thought to herself. This big white wolf? This person is probably a senior of Rejuvenation Valley. But aren't you talking nonsense? If I'm a disciple of someone, why wouldn't I know your pet? Yes, maybe this is Rejuvenation Valley's mascot. Since I can make a move, of course I'm not a disciple of Rejuvenation Valley. If you can't even distinguish this logic, how can you be a senior? Zhang Xiaohua smiled apologetically and said, I'm not a disciple of Rejuvenation Valley. May I ask for senior's name? Once he heard that Zhang Xiaohua was not a disciple of Rejuvenation Valley, the old man's face became alert. Even the big white wolf turned its head again, looking somewhat fierce. Unfortunately, although the big white wolf looked fierce, its fearful eyes had already betrayed its feelings. The old man said, Since you're not a disciple of Rejuvenation Valley, why did you barge into my Rejuvenation Valley? Where did you come in from? Zhang Xiaohua turned her head to look at the towering cliff in the distance and said with a smile, Old man, do you think there's a path to come down from here? The old man was startled and answered casually, Of course there isn't. However, after he finished speaking, he felt that something was wrong and immediately said, I'm asking you, not you asking me. Zhang Xiaohua pointed behind him and said, Of course I came in from the entrance of the outer valley. The old man snorted lightly and said, Your story is too poorly made up. You might as well have said that you flew down from the cliff. The inner valley of Rejuvenation Valley has always prohibited outsiders from entering, not to mention the depths of the inner valley. Even the disciples of the valley are not allowed to enter. Who would have thought that someone like you would actually? At this point, he looked at the bright sun grass in the distance and said with a nod, It seems that you are here for this scarlet flame grass. Immediately, he said sternly, Speak quickly. Who sent you in? If you have an honest attitude and confess, this old man will not pursue your crimes. I will only take you down and interrogate the person behind you. Scarlet flame grass? Zhang Xiaohua was startled. She pointed at the bright sun grass and said, You call it scarlet flame grass? A strange look flashed through the old man's eyes, but he was not moved by Zhang Xiaohua's words. He patted the white wolf's head, and the white wolf obediently stood to the side. It raised its head and growled again. Its eyes looked at Zhang Xiaohua as if it was provoking her again. The old man also took a step forward and waved the small hoe in his hand. He said sternly, Brat, seeing that you're not honest and still want to change the topic, you must not be a good person. Are you going to surrender without a fight? Or are you going to let this old man kill you with one palm strike? Wow, Zhang Xiaohua exclaimed in surprise. Isn't this old man too subjective? This temper, TSK, is even more fiery than a young man like me, wanting to kill people with one palm strike at the slightest provocation. Zhang Xiaohua asked with interest, Old man, how can you tell that I'm not a good person? Do you think you have the right to sentence me to death based on your own good and evil? The old man did not expect Zhang Xiaohua to say this and was slightly stunned. He laughed heartily and said, When this old man was enforcing the law in Rejuvenation Valley, I don't know how many thieves like you I've seen. They sneaked into my Rejuvenation Valley and coveted my Rejuvenation Valley's rare medicinal herbs and miraculous elixirs. The number of thieves who were killed by this old man's palm is countless. Now you're one more. Seeing the old man's conceited look, Zhang Xiaohua was speechless. She could only say helplessly, Old man, if you're talking about the scarlet fire grass, I admit that I saw it when I walked here and wanted to pick it to refine elixirs. However, if you're talking about the elixirs that are boiled with water in Rejuvenation Valley, please, I really don't have the slightest interest. And most importantly, although I'm not a disciple of Rejuvenation Valley, since I can appear in Rejuvenation Valley, other than sneaking in as you said, I'm a friend of Valley Master Nie's youngest daughter. I was invited to the Inner Valley by Nie Qinyu. What? You've even been to Rejuvenation Valley's elixir refining area? This Commander Nie, how can he not know the severity of the matter? How can he let an outsider casually enter the elixir room? Sai, he's still so coarse, he hasn't changed at all. Commander Nie? When Zhang Xiaohua heard Valley Master Nie's name, she almost laughed out loud. No matter how she looked at it, Valley Master Nie did not have anything to do with the word commander. Furthermore, this old man actually said that Valley Master Nye was coarse. It really was, you have a body of white hair, but you say that others are monsters. Afterwards, the old man looked up and down at Zhang Xiaohua, asking, how is Nye Qinyu related to Commander Nye? I remember that this brat's daughters all have similar names. Io, are you a child of Dear Cry Secu family? I remember that when you were young, you followed old you to Rejuvenation Valley. Zhang Xiaohua did not know whether to laugh or cry. You're talking about Nye Qinyu's eldest sister, Nye Qinro. Her husband is Dear Cry Secu. I'm sorry, I don't remember what you is. I only saw him once a few months ago. Nye Qinyu is Valley Master Nye's youngest daughter. Oh, that girl. Sigh. Even she's grown up and found a husband, Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly said. Old man, you're mistaken again. I'm only Nye Qinyu's friend. The old man copied Zhang Xiaohua, waving his hand and interrupting his words, saying, what friend? You've already entered our Rejuvenation Valley's pill room. Can you still be ordinary friends? Little brat, you must be honest. This. Zhang Xiaohua did not know how to explain her dishonesty. But, after the two of them said this, the old man seemed to have understood that there was some misunderstanding. His tone seemed to have confirmed Zhang Xiaohua's identity, but the little hoe in his hand was still raised in the air, not relaxing in the slightest. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua glanced sideways at the scarlet flame grass not far away and cupped her hands, saying, I didn't know that this scarlet flame grass belonged to you. Please forgive me. Since you've already come, I'll leave now. What do you think? Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua was about to leave, the old man immediately said, no. Although you've said so much, it's all just one side of the story. How can I be so easily fooled? Moreover, you already know the location of this scarlet flame grass. In the future, you might take the opportunity to pick it. Zhang Xiaohua smiled, saying, that's easy. I'm going to the pill room at the entrance of the valley now. If you're willing, you can come with me. Speaking up to here, her heart stirred. She released her divine sense and already saw a few people rushing over here. The one in the lead was Valley Master Nye, but the old man waved his hand and said, my time is precious. I'm picking herbs here. How can I have the time to accompany you back to the valley? Wait a moment. Big White's roar just now should have already notified the valley. I'm sure your so-called father-in-law is rushing over here. Hee, little brat. If you're lying to me, I'll let Big White tear you to pieces later. Old man, I'll say it again. I'm not Nye Qinyu's husband. Zhang Xiaohua was flustered and exasperated. It's the same. You're not now, but you'll be sooner or later. The old man curled his lips and said, you. Zhang Xiaohua looked up at the sky and ignored him. Chapter 464. It turned out that the old man had spoken harshly for a long time, but didn't try to capture him. Instead, he made him explain again and again. However, it was all a delaying tactic, waiting for Valley Head Nye and the others to come over and confront him or surround him. Zhang Xiaohua still somewhat underestimated the intelligence of these Jianghu veterans. Sure enough, after a long while, the old man slapped Big White's head again. The big white wolf then gave a low howl. Valley Head Nye and the others received the message and also gave a long howl in response, directly pouncing towards Zhang Xiaohua's side. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's calm and composed appearance, presumably the explanation just now was true, the old man gradually put down his little hoe. Only the big white wolf that had suffered a loss before still stared at Zhang Xiaohua without letting go. Valley Head Nye brought a few people to the scene and saw Zhang Xiaohua and the old man standing there from afar. He already knew that there was a misunderstanding, and before he even arrived, he shouted loudly, Elder Zhang, it's a misunderstanding, please don't fight. Elder Zhang turned around and scolded jokingly. When did you see me fight? It's your good son-in-law who beat up Big White. I still have to get justice for Big White. Valley Head Nye ran in front and bowed towards Elder Zhang. Elder, long time no see, how are you? Elder Zhang waved the little hoe in his hand and said, no official position, my body is light. Right now, I'm picking herbs under the eastern fence, leisurely looking at the southern mountain. Very good, very good. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the old man, pretending to be cultured. It was quite similar to how she fiddled with words in front of Little Orange that day and almost laughed out loud. Valley Hednya's eyes were also full of smiles, and he repeatedly congratulated. That's good, that's good. Then he turned around and asked in surprise, Virtuous nephew Run, I heard from Little You that you were refining pills in the pill room in the afternoon. Why did you run here? Hee, this is a rather secretive place in Rejuvenation Valley, and it's quite dangerous. It's also my fault that I didn't tell you properly yesterday. These words sounded like concern, but they were actually blaming Zhang Xiaohua for coming in without telling her. Zhang Xiaohua scratched her head and said with a smile, How can I blame Uncle Nia? Wasn't it because little nephew was refining pills in the pill room for a while and was bored, so I came out for a walk. I saw that the medicinal herbs here were very rare, so I came all the way here. If it's not convenient for Uncle Nia, I won't be coming in the future. How could Valley Master Nia not understand the meaning behind Renbachian's words? He waved his hand and said, It doesn't matter. Since Nephew Ren has seen enough of Rejuvenation Valley's pill recipes, what else is there to keep secret here? If Nephew Ren likes it, feel free to come. My Rejuvenation Valley can't see all the medicinal herbs here, and many of them are unknown. If Nephew Ren recognizes them and wants to pick them, feel free to do so. Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed when she heard this and cupped her hands in thanks to Valley Master Nia. Elder Zhang, who was at the side, couldn't take it anymore and shouted, Marshal Nia, although you're the Valley Master of Rejuvenation Valley, I'm also your elder. I was the one who introduced the wife you married when you were young. How important is our Rejuvenation Valley's pill recipes? Why didn't you discuss it with the other elders before showing it to others? Even if he's your son-in-law, I heard him say that he hasn't married into your family yet. How can you be so casual? Zhang Xiaohua held her stomach and laughed secretly. Valley Master Nie's face was full of black lines, and he could only smile apologetically and say, All the elders are enjoying their old age in the inner valley. I don't dare to disturb them for such a small matter. Elder Zhang, haven't you not seen me for almost half a year? I want to find you for something before the new year, but I didn't see you several times. If it wasn't for Big White's warning today, I wouldn't have known that you were here. Then, he pulled Elder Zhang to one side and told him the whole story in detail. Elder Zhang listened while glancing at Zhang Xiaohua. His gaze was very interesting. At first, it was disdain, then praise, then amazement, and finally surprise, admiration, pity, and so on. Zhang Xiaohua was filled with displeasure from being looked at like that. After Valley Master Nye finished speaking, Elder Zhang walked in front of Zhang Xiaohua and said, Rin Xiaoxia, I was a little rude just now and shot a dart at you. I really can't justify it. Saying that, he cupped his hands and was about to apologize. Zhang Xiaohua saw that he was Valley Master Nye's elder, so how would she dare to let him apologize? She hurriedly held onto his arm and apologized. Elder Zhang is wrong. It was my fault first. First, I wanted to pick your scarlet flame grass. Then I hurt your big white wolf. It was my fault. Elder Zhang was an elder, and he didn't really want to apologize. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua holding on his arm to give him a way out, he used a little strength and was about to get up. But when he used his strength, Zhang Xiaohua's hand was like a huge rock that couldn't be moved. Thinking about how Valley Master Nye said that Zhang Xiaohua was the winner of the arena battle, he couldn't help but have the desire to win. Using strength in his arms, he was about to bow down. When Zhang Xiaohua saw this, she was angry. How could this old man be like this? Just now, you didn't ask about the situation and wanted to attack. Now that I'm stopping you, you're still supporting me. Tell me, should I stop you or not? If I don't stop you, you want the elder to apologize to you. How can you be a junior? Also, Elder Zhang's arms were already using strength. If she withdrew her strength, perhaps the old man's mouth would be stuck in the mud. If she stopped him, wouldn't this be a competition? It would also show that she was impudent in fighting with an elder. Just now, she didn't know, but now that she was fighting, it wasn't right. Without any other choice, Zhang Xiaohua could only use strength in her hands to support Elder Zhang firmly. At least this way, she could save a few teeth in Elder Zhang's mouth. When Valley Master Nye saw this, he hurriedly called out, Elder Zhang, don't lower yourself to the same level as the younger generation. I know that you don't have a suitable person to spar with in the valley. If you have this idea, wait until you return to the outer valley and spar in the arena. Why do you need to compete in the wilderness? When Elder Zhang heard this, his eyes lit up and he said, That's good. He immediately retracted his arms. Zhang Xiaohua shook her head and said, Not good, not good. Seeing the two separate, Valley Master Nye then looked at the scarlet flame grass not far away and said, Has Elder Zhang always been here looking after this scarlet flame grass? I said that I couldn't find you. Elder Zhang pointed at the big white wolf and said, Actually, most of the time, it's Big White who looks after it. I'm just looking for herbs in the surroundings to move my hands and feet. Valley Master Nye walked forward and carefully looked at the scarlet flame grass. He nodded and said, This scarlet flame grass seems to be 100 years old. It's enough to be of great use. It's just that crimson pearl grass, bitter bamboo grass, chu ding jin, and other supplementary materials are hard to find. Otherwise, there's nothing else. Even if we have these herbs, our rejuvenation valley has no way of refining the crimson flame pill. As he said this, his eyes lightly glanced at Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. Valley Master Nye's words were strange. In the jade slip, there was a medicinal pill called the Meridian Soothing Pill. It was made with bright yang grass and crimson pearl grass as the main ingredients and other supplementary materials. It was used to nourish the meridians and recuperate the meridians. The main use of the bright yang grass was to make the bright yang pill. It could refine the qi in the meridians and improve one's cultivation. Elder Zhang waved his hand and said, I haven't done anything these past few years. I've just been collecting herbs in the valley. The ingredients for the Crimson Flame Pill are all ready. It's just that I haven't had the confidence to refine it. If it wasn't for this kid finding this scarlet flame grass today, speaking to this point, he suddenly stopped. He looked at Zhang Xiaohua with a bit of excitement and asked, Ren Xiaoxia, I remember that when you heard me mention the name of this scarlet flame grass, you didn't agree. You pointed at it and asked me, You call it scarlet flame grass? Is that right? At this point, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't deny it. He could only brace himself and say, Yes, I did say so. Then, what do you think it should be called? Elder Zhang looked at him with bright eyes. Zhang Xiaohua scratched his head and said, Old senior, this is a tattered little book that I saw a long time ago. There were pictures of herbs that looked like this scarlet flame grass. Since you say it's scarlet flame grass, then it's scarlet flame grass. I think I must have seen wrongly. Don't, kid. Think carefully. It doesn't matter if you're wrong. Elder Zhang's face was kind, but Zhang Xiaohua looked a bit like Dabai's grandmother. He could only pretend to be thinking. After a while, he hesitated and said, It seems to be morning sungrass, bright yang grass, or sunset grass. I can't remember. Elder Zhang clapped his hands and said, Okay, it's bright yang grass. That's right, kid. Just now Nye Shuai said that you know how to refine pills. And you also know that the ancient name of this scarlet flame grass is bright yang grass. Logically speaking, your Beidu school should also be an ancient alchemy sect. How come I've never heard of it? Zhang Xiaohua laughed secretly. It would be strange if you knew. But he said, I'm not too sure. Our Beidu school doesn't get involved in Jianghu matters. The elders in the sect also don't come out. Oh, so it's like that. Elder Zhang was obviously very disappointed. Seeing the two chattering nonstop, Valley Master Nye said, Elder Zhang, it's not easy to meet you. I see that you still have a lot of things to ask Nephew Ren. Why don't you come back to the outer valley with us? You can also see the changes in the valley and the pills that Nephew Ren helped us refine. Yes, Valley Master Nye's words are very reasonable. Elder Zhang nodded and said, I also want to see the ancient alchemy techniques and what kind of pills can be refined. Then, he said, You guys wait here for a while. I'll be back soon. After he finished speaking, he used his qigong and left. Not long after, he came back with a small bag. Then, he patted the big white wolf's head. The white wolf licked Elder Zhang's hand with its tongue and lazily walked to the side of the flaming red grass and lay down on the ground. Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously, Elder Zhang, Since this flaming red grass is already 100 years old and can be used as medicine, why don't you just pick it directly? Elder Zhang said very meaningfully, now is not the time. If you don't have the confidence to refine pills, then let it grow for 1,000 years. 1,000 years? Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but twitch her mouth and secretly said, how is that possible? If it's in the wilderness, it's possible, but in this rejuvenation valley? Although it's in the inner valley and people rarely come here, there will still be people who will see it. Since it's seen, how can it be preserved for a long time? What's more, how old is your grandfather? When you're gone, then let me pick it. It's inhumane to let this flaming red grass be lonely in the wind for no reason. Thinking of this, his heart suddenly moved. If I don't have the confidence to refine pills? But what if I have the confidence to refine pills? Zhang Xiaohua also glanced at Elder Zhang. Her eyes were also very meaningful. Chapter 465. Elder Zhang lived some distance away from Zhang Xiaohua's pill room, but they were both on the left side of the inner valley. In front was a simple bamboo room, and behind it was the pill room. Looking at his tightly shut door, Elder Zhang smiled. I haven't returned to this room for many months. He then looked around. Where are your senior sect brothers? Are they all home? Valley head Nya smiled wryly. Don't mention them. Even the other elders are like wild cranes. I don't know where they've flown off to. Elder Zhang said, we haven't been elders for many years. Shouldn't we be researching our own things and doing the things we like to do? Valley head Nya said solemnly, Elder Zhang is right. You've made many contributions to Rejuvenation Valley in the past. Now it's up to us. He then said mysteriously, please wait a moment. I'll be right back. Elder Zhang seemed to know what he was going to do and nodded. Come back quickly. I want to see if this kid is really a green onion. Zhang Xiaohua rolled her eyes when she heard this and thought, is there anyone who talks like that? If I'm not a green onion, then what am I? How can I be a green onion? Valley head Nya quickly left with his two subordinates. He left behind a few disciples to open Elder Zhang's door and help him tidy up. The interior of the bamboo room was very simple. There was a bamboo couch, a bamboo chair, and a bamboo desk. It didn't take long for everything to be cleaned up. After the disciples left, Elder Zhang entered the room and carefully placed the small package in his hand on the couch. He turned his head and said to Zhang Xiaohua, young man, sit. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the only chair in the room and shook her head. Elder should sit. This junior can stand. Elder Zhang didn't hold back and threw his body onto the bamboo chair. He rocked left and right and murmured, I haven't been so relaxed in a long time. Days of looking at the clouds and listening to the wind are truly pleasant. Zhang Xiaohua knew that he wanted her to continue the conversation. Thus, she closed her mouth and pretended that she was only listening. Elder Zhang waited for a while, but no one responded. He could only mutter to himself, I'm old and only want to do the things I like. I mostly ignore the matters of Rejuvenation Valley. Therefore, I didn't know that you saved the Valley Head's daughter and resolved Rejuvenation Valley's crisis. Seeing that Elder Zhang was about to express his gratitude again, Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly said, Old senior, you're old, but you're still strong. You'll definitely be able to use your remaining energy to write a new chapter. I merely ran into Miss Nia for a while. Anyone with a heart would lend a helping hand in this matter. Someone with a heart? Ha! Elder Zhang sighed and said, there are few people with such intentions, but there are many others with such intentions. Then he continued to ask, by the way, young man, you said that you saw a booklet with the name Yonggrass. What's the name? Zhang Xiaohua inwardly said, I knew you'd ask. Even if I wanted to shut up, I didn't have a chance. Zhang Xiaohua could only say, it's not that I don't want to tell old senior, but this booklet really is something from a long time ago. Also, it doesn't seem to have been read in my sect. At that time, I only saw that the drawings inside were very interesting and remembered them in my heart. I've already forgotten the rest. Elder Zhang didn't find it strange that Zhang Xiaohua had completely pushed away the responsibility. He said, this was a fortuitous opportunity. Unfortunately, you were still young at the time and missed it. Zhang Xiaohua was startled and said, "What do you mean?" Elder Zhang thought for a moment and said, "It's a long story. To put it simply, alchemy has a long history. I'm afraid it's at least 10,000 years old. It existed as early as the ancient times, and the study of medicinal herbs closely related to alchemy also has a very long history. But I don't know what happened, but alchemy now seems to be very different from alchemy in the past. Even medicinal herbs are very different. In the ancient times, it's said that medicinal herbs grew luxuriantly, and all kinds of rare herbs existed. There were some that were hundreds of years old, thousands of years old, and even tens of thousands of years old. However, these are all legends. Most of the medicinal herbs have been annihilated, and not even a trace can be found. Moreover, for some reason, the ancient books have not been passed down. Not to mention alchemy, even the ancient books on medicinal herbs are ordinary. Therefore, although there are many medicinal herbs that have survived, they have lost their original names. Even if there are people who know a little about them, they have slowly changed through word of mouth. Until now, it's almost completely different from the ancient times. Also, in these thousands of years, many medicinal herbs have grown from the vast land. No one knows whether these are ancient varieties or new varieties. Therefore, alchemy, elixir recipes, and so on have also changed. Zhang Xiaohua didn't interrupt and only listened quietly. Yes, the changes in the world over the past 10,000 years had changed even the fist techniques into a complete mess, not to mention the unorthodox alchemy, medicinal herbs, and elixir recipes. After listening for a while, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but ask, "How does Elder Zhang know all these?" But as soon as she asked, she regretted it in her heart. Didn't Elder Zhang want me to ask? Moreover, wasn't the answer to this question found in the Rejuvenation Valley's ancient books? Unexpectedly, Elder Zhang said, "Back then, I was also infatuated with martial arts and didn't know anything about alchemy. Later on, by chance and coincidence, just like when you were young, I obtained a small book left behind by a predecessor. It talked about a lot of knowledge about alchemy and medicinal herbs. Only then did I become interested in alchemy. Later on, I joined this Rejuvenation Valley and became an elder." Zhang Xiaohua nodded and thought to herself, "So he also left home halfway. Alas, it's a pity that this kind of small book is also the insights of predecessors in studying ancient medicinal herbs and alchemy. It's extremely rare, and I only obtained one book. Later on, I also read 2 books in Rejuvenation Valley, but I always felt that there was too little information inside. If you hadn't missed the opportunity, I would have been able to read the 4th book." Zhang Xiaohua said apologetically, "It's a pity that this junior was too young and really didn't know the value of that small book. I've disappointed senior." Elder Zhang shook his head and said, "Do you know what I like to do the most right now?" Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, "Gather medicinal herbs." Elder Zhang laughed involuntarily and said, "My greatest wish right now is..." Halfway through his words, he took out a book from the small bundle on the bed and handed it to Zhang Xiaohua, saying, "Open it." Zhang Xiaohua frowned and took the book. She flipped through the pages one by one. However, the more she read, the more shocked she became. She couldn't help but ask, "Elder Zhang is actually so proficient in medicinal herbs. Moreover, many of these medicinal herbs have their characteristics and medicinal properties indicated. Oh, they even have their respective names from ancient times and now." As she spoke, she flipped to a page and found a thin jade slip. This page also recorded the scarlet flame grass. Beside it was written, ancient name, bright sun grass. Zhang Xiaohua took out the jade slip and casually held it in her hand. She said, "So Elder Zhang has already recorded the other name of the scarlet flame grass in this book." Elder Zhang smiled and said, "That's right. I also saw this bright sun grass in a small book in Rejuvenation Valley. That's why I was surprised when you mentioned the bright sun grass. This ancient name isn't something that just anyone can know." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and continued to flip through the pages. Sure enough, there were many medicinal herbs at the back, and all of them had 2 names. Many of them were things that Zhang Xiaohua had seen in the jade slip. Zhang Xiaohua sighed in her heart. She thought to herself, "That's right. Although alchemy is highly valued, the foundation of alchemy is the medicinal herbs. Only someone like Elder Zhang, who is unknown and has done the basic work of alchemy in detail, can refine better alchemy. There were many things in the small book, and it definitely wasn't something that could be finished right now. Zhang Xiaohua only flipped through a little before closing the book. Elder Zhang saw that Zhang Xiaohua had finished reading and said, "I'll let you see another thing." Finished speaking, he lowered his head and went to take out the small bundle. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the small book in her hand. Just as she was about to insert the thin jade slip in her hand into the book, her divine sense habitually swept over the jade slip. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaohua was stunned on the spot. Elder Zhang didn't notice Zhang Xiaohua's behavior. He took out an even thinner book from the small bundle and was about to hand it to Zhang Xiaohua. But when he saw Zhang Xiaohua's stunned expression, he found it funny and called out, young man, don't be like this, okay? I'm just making a small contribution to alchemy and slightly promoting the development of alchemy. You don't have to worship me like this. I'm just an ordinary person." Hearing Elder Zhang's call, Zhang Xiaohua came back to her senses and said with a smile, "An ordinary person doing extraordinary things. I'm really moved by your spirit. Today, you may be high and few people will see this small book, but history will remember your achievements. Time will prove your wisdom. You will definitely stop." Elder Zhang finally blushed and said embarrassedly, "This old man is not so noble. I only do what I like. All right, take a look at these pill formulas." Although he said that, his tone was a bit affectionate. Zhang Xiaohua placed the small book on the table and carefully placed the jade slip beside it. She took the thin book and saw the words Crimson Flame Pill on the page that Elder Zhang had just opened. Behind it were the ingredients and refining method. It was the pill formula for the Crimson Flame Pill. After looking at the pill formula for the Crimson Flame Pill, Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to look at the other pill formulas and returned the small book to Elder Zhang. His heart moved, and he returned to the front of the table. He picked up the book and found the names of the ingredients that he saw in the pill formula. When he finished looking, he couldn't help but be shocked. The ingredients in the Crimson Flame Pill formula were exactly the same as the Meridian Nourishing Pill in the Jade Slip. It was just that the names of the ingredients were mostly changed. If there was any difference between these two pill recipes, it would be the difference in refining methods. Instantly, Zhang Xiaohua understood that the Crimson Flame Pill was a Meridian Soothing Pill. However, the Martial Dao could not use the Immortal Dao's alchemy techniques to alter the refining process. Please vote, comment, and read more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 466. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua turn back to look at the booklet again, Elder Zhang smiled and said, "Did you think of something?" Seeing Zhang Xiaohua deep in thought, he said, "If we compare this booklet and put the ancient name inside, wouldn't it be another ancient pill recipe?" Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, "That's right." Seeing Zhang Xiaohua's response, Elder Zhang smiled and said, "If this Crimson Flame Pill is successfully refined according to this pill recipe, wouldn't this pill have two names? One would have the ancient name of the pill, and the other would be the current Crimson Flame Pill? In other words, didn't we refine the legendary ancient medicinal pills?" Elder Zhang stared straight at Zhang Xiaohua, waiting for him to speak. But Zhang Xiaohua suddenly looked at the jade slip on the table and picked it up with interest, asking, "Elder Zhang, this jade slip looks warm and smooth, like a piece of good jade. Where did you get it?" Elder Zhang heard and frowned, impatiently saying, "It can't be considered good jade. The color is a bit mottled. I saw in the pill room and casually put in the book. It's really useful." Then he said, "Run Xiaoxia, aren't you interested in doing this interesting thing with me?" Zhang Xiaohua still did not answer his question. He raised the jade piece to the light outside and studied it carefully. He said, "This jade piece doesn't seem to be polished. If it was naturally formed, it would be very difficult for it to be this thin. It's a waste for the old man to use it to hold books." Elder Zhang saw that he kept changing the topic and waved his hand resolutely, saying, "If I don't use it to hold a book, what else can I do? It's not square and can be used as a paperweight. If you like it, take it. I don't have any use for it." Zhang Xiaohua heard and was overjoyed, but still said, "This, I'm afraid it's not good. A gentleman doesn't take away others' good." Elder Zhang said, "I don't like it, just take it." Zhang Xiaohua cupped his hands and said, "I don't dare refuse an elder's gift, so I will shamelessly accept it." Finished speaking, he casually put it into his pocket. And it really was very casual. Elder Zhang saw him put away the jade slip and asked carefully, "Ren Xiaoxiao really doesn't want to do something that will affect the history of pill refining? You must know, if you can successfully refine it, it will have epic-making significance in the history of pill refining. It's a turning point, a starting point." When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, he couldn't stop laughing wildly in his heart. He thought to himself, "If that's the case, then I don't know how many times I made the turning point in the pill room of Rejuvenation Valley this afternoon. Oh, that's right, I've already begun to turn it." But on the surface, he still smiled wryly and said, "Elder, it's not that I'm not tempted, but this ancient pill recipe requires an ancient refining method. If I use Rejuvenation Valley's water decoction method, it will only fail." Elder Zhang criticized endlessly in his heart. "Isn't this nonsense? If the water decoction method can succeed, why would I waste time with you? I've been talking for half a day. Isn't it just that I know you can use earth fire to refine pills directly?" Elder Zhang was about to speak when Zhang Xiaohua suddenly slapped his forehead and exclaimed, "I remember now. Elder Zhang, I remember where I saw the name Sunshine Grass." When Elder Zhang heard this, he threw the matter of pill refining to the back of his mind and asked eagerly, "Where did you see it?" Zhang Xiaohua smiled apologetically and said, "There's a small compartment in the attic of my hometown. Inside are some trinkets that I picked up from the fields outside when I was young. Among them is a large and thick book with many drawings of grass. When I had nothing to do, I flipped through it for fun. However, I don't remember where I picked this book up from. Moreover, the attic has long been torn down, so I don't know if I can find it now." "What? You said that book is big and thick?" Elder Zhang was both surprised and surprised as he asked. Zhang Xiaohua looked at him and pointed to the small book he wrote. "It should be several times larger and thicker than this." When Elder Zhang heard this, he rushed forward and grabbed his collar, saying, "Brat, the attic has been torn down, so that book—" Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "The attic has long been torn down, but I hid my small belongings well. However, I haven't been home for a long time, so I don't know if those things are still there. Where's your home? I'll go right now." Elder Zhang said anxiously. Zhang Xiaohua shook his head and said, "I hid those things very well. Even if I went back by myself, it would be difficult to find them. You don't even need to think about it. That book is of no use to me. If it is as you say, those are ancient medicinal herbs, and I have no use for them. When I have time to go back and find them, I will definitely find a way to send them to Rejuvenation Valley. What do you think?" This, Elder Zhang was very helpless and dejectedly threw himself back onto the bamboo chair, saying, "That's the only way." That's right, knowing that there was something that he had been searching for many years but still couldn't get his hands on it. Even if it was an old man who had seen the wind and rain, it still wasn't easy for him to accept. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua felt very apologetic and comforted. "Elder Zhang, don't worry, I will definitely send it to you." When Elder Zhang heard this, he forced a smile and said, "And you're too considerate. Anyways, I've been searching for more than 10 years. A few more years won't make a difference." Just as they were talking, Valley Head Nya brought a few more disciples over. Waving his hand, he let the disciples wait outside. Valley Head Nya entered the bamboo house alone. Seeing the two people happily chatting, he knew that the misunderstanding just now had been cleared up. He walked to Elder Zhang's side and took out a few small porcelain bottles from his bosom, handing them to him, saying, "Like I said, Elder Zhang, you and Nephew Run will definitely have a common language. Just now is just a small misunderstanding. Look, this is the medicinal pill that Nephew Run refined using the ancient method." At this time, words were already written on the porcelain bottles. Elder Zhang casually took the porcelain bottle with the words "blood-replenishing pill" written on it and said with a frown, "This blood-replenishing pill is Rejuvenation Valley's signature medicinal pill. Could it be that Ren Xiaoxiao has already learned it?" After he finished speaking, he opened the seal and poured out a brown-red medicinal pill. That medicinal pill was one size smaller than the one that Zhang Xiaohua saw Zhou Tai holding in the peach forest, but it was also perfectly round. Zhang Xiaohua was very puzzled. They gave him powder, so how could they make it so round? Seeing the medicinal pill in his hand, Elder Zhang's expression changed, and he sternly said, "Commander Nya, although you are the valley head, this old man also has to say a few words today. Our Rejuvenation Valley stands tall in Jianghu because we rely on our reputation. Our reputation of not deceiving both old and young people. The heroes of Jianghu trust us and trust our medicinal pills. When they save a life, the first thing they think of is our medicinal pills. Although this old man has not participated in the affairs of the valley for many years, how can this blood-replenishing pill shrink so much? Cutting corners is the beginning of digging one's own grave." At the side, Zhang Xiaohua listened in a daze. This old man was really amazing. He drew inferences from one case and was really good at scolding people. No wonder he could be an elder. If it was her, would she encourage Valley Head Nya to continue? Valley Master Nya listened obediently, as if he already knew Elder Zhang's temper. Seeing him spit all over the place, he didn't refute a single word. When Elder Zhang was tired of speaking, Valley Head Nya said softly, "Elder Zhang's lecture is correct. Although you're no longer an elder, your heart is still in this position. I hope you will continue to spur the younger generation in the future. However, I would like to ask you to evaluate the blood-replenishing pill that Nephew Run refined using the ancient method. How is it different from our medicinal pills?" Elder Zhang glanced at Valley Head Nya, then looked at the calm Zhang Xiaohua. He put the blood-replenishing pill in front of his nose and sniffed it. Then, without a frown, he put it on his tongue and licked it. His brows furrowed even more. At the side, Zhang Xiaohua found it very funny. This Elder Zhang's expression was really too rich. Just now, in the valley, the way he looked at her, the way he talked to her, and suddenly, Zhang Xiaohua thought, this Elder Zhang couldn't have put the blood-replenishing pill in his mouth to taste the medicinal effects, right? Just as she was thinking, Elder Zhang really opened his mouth and threw the blood-replenishing pill into his mouth, as if he wanted to eat beans. Then, he began to eat with a crunching sound. Oh, this sound was purely from Zhang Xiaohua's imagination. After seeing the blood-replenishing pill enter his mouth, Elder Zhang's expression became even more wonderful. First, his brows furrowed, then they relaxed. His eyes widened as he looked at Valley Head Nya in surprise. Then, he looked at Zhang Xiaohua in surprise. Finally, he closed his eyes and tasted the blood-replenishing pill, no longer speaking. After a moment, Elder Zhang suddenly opened his eyes. There seemed to be a flash of light in his eyes as he said, "Commander Nya, was this pill really refined by Rin Xiaoxia? Yes, this junior saw it with my own eyes." Valley Head Nya respectfully said. Elder Zhang's words almost caused the two people present to faint from shock. "Then why are you still in a daze? Why don't you let Rin Xiaoxia and your Nya Qian go through the wedding ceremony? Even if you give 3 Nya Qians to this brat, it's still worth it." Zhang Xiaohua's figure swayed, and she barely managed to stand up. Valley Head Nya was also an iron plank bridge. He steadied himself and said with a wry smile, "Elder Zhang is joking. Qianrong and Qianxiu are both married. Rin Xiaoxia also has a chivalrous heart and reached out to help us. How can we?" Elder Zhang didn't wait for Rin Baqian to finish speaking. He smiled mischievously at Zhang Xiaohua and said, "Young hero Rin, you are a friend of Nya Qian or something. If you work hard, you can become the son-in-law of Rejuvenation Valley." Zhang Xiaohua knew that it was useless to say more at this time, so she didn't speak. On the side, Valley Head Nya hurriedly changed the topic and said, "Elder Zhang, let's not talk about other things first. How do you think the effects of this pill compare to the previous blood-replenishing pill?" Elder Zhang waved his hand and said, "There's no need to compare. This blood-replenishing pill melts in the mouth. It's sweet and refreshing, as smooth as silk. It feels very good. It's not on the same level as the previous pills that were chewed." Valley Head Nya's face darkened, and he asked in a low voice, "Elder Zhang, this junior is asking about the effects of the pill, not the taste." Elder Zhang glared and said reproachfully, Marshal Nya, it's not that I want to criticize you, but you're also the leader of our Rejuvenation Valley. Don't we know that in order for this pill to be recognized by the people of the Jianghu, not only does it have to be effective, it also has to have the taste and appearance. One melts in the mouth, and the other is as hard to chew as copper peas. Which one will people choose after tasting it? Then he picked up the small porcelain bottle in his hand and said, Also, you shouldn't underestimate this porcelain bottle. This is the result of the hard work of previous generations. People will know that our Rejuvenation Valley's pills are of high quality just by looking at this porcelain bottle. Zhang Xiaohua's mouth was wide open as she listened foolishly. Chapter 467. After Elder Zhang talked about the importance of the porcelain bottle and the taste, he said again, Of course, the main function of the medicinal pill is the medicinal effect. No matter how well it is made, if it doesn't have a good medicinal effect, people will only be fooled once and won't turn back a second time. If our Rejuvenation Valley wants to make something, we must make something that is the same on the outside and on the inside. Valley Master Nya opened his sleepy eyes and said, Elder Zhang, can you talk about the medicinal effect now? Yes, there is nothing to say about the medicinal effect. Not bad, not bad. After Elder Zhang finished speaking, he closed his mouth and didn't say another word. Valley Master Nya asked curiously, Just these 2 words? Yes, it's not bad. Bang! Valley Master Nya fell to the ground. It took him a lot of effort to hold back his patience and wait for Elder Zhang to finish rambling. He wanted to hear him talk about the effects of the medicine, but Elder Zhang summed it up in 2 words. He was really concise and comprehensive. When Valley Master Nya stood up and brushed the dust off his body, he said with a bitter smile, Elder Zhang, can you be more specific? Oh, you want to be more specific? You should have said it earlier. If you didn't say it, how would I know what you wanted me to say? When he was done talking, he put away his smile and said seriously, Valley Master Nya, in fact, what I said just now was not nonsense. It is the advantage of this blood-replenishing pill. Moreover, based on my experience, the medicinal effect of this blood-replenishing pill should be twice as good as the blood-replenishing pill produced by our Rejuvenation Valley. When Valley Master Nya heard this, he said with a smile, Elder Zhang is right. This junior also made a rough estimate. Also, you see, the amount of this medicinal pill is twice as small as before. In other words, using half of the medicinal herbs from before, we can make a blood-replenishing pill that is 4 times as good as now. This kind of utilization of medicinal herbs and the effect of saving energy is the goal that our Rejuvenation Valley has been striving for more than 10 generations. I didn't expect it to be realized by this junior. With tears in his eyes, he said, It's really the ancestors who have shown up. The heavens have blessed our Rejuvenation Valley. This time, it was Elder Zhang and Zhang Xiaohua's turn to be speechless. Waiting for Valley Head Nye's mental state to stabilize, Elder Zhang reminded him, Valley Head, no matter how good this blood-replenishing pill is, it was refined by an outsider. It's better to turn the outsider into an insider as soon as possible. Your 3 daughters are all. Valley Master Nya continued. Elder Zhang may not know this, but Nephew Ren has already imparted the ancient method of refining medicinal pills to this junior. Of course, my Rejuvenation Valley has also paid a price. The price is your 3 daughters? Good, it was worth it. I've long found old man Chang unpleasing to the eye. It's better to divorce him as soon as possible. But old man Yu is still not bad. This is more difficult to deal with. Alas, it was a good thing that Zhang Xiaohua and Valley Master Nya had been using the 1,000-kilogram drop, so they were able to stand firmly on the ground. Valley Master Nya wiped away the sweat on his face and said, Ren Xiaoxia's request is to see all of our Rejuvenation Valley's pill recipes and help us refine them into pills. Do you understand? Elder Zhang said in surprise. This is what you said just now. The reason for handing over all of the pill recipes to Hero Ren? Valley Master Nye's face was filled with apprehension as he said, That's right. Elder Zhang, please punish me. This junior will definitely humbly accept the old man's reprimand and do a good job of criticism and self-criticism. I won't disappoint. Without waiting for Valley Master Nya to finish speaking, Elder Zhang suddenly stood up and walked in front of Zhang Xiaohua. He grabbed both of his hands and shook them enthusiastically while saying, "Hero run! Hero run! Could this be the legendary not benefiting oneself, but benefiting others? You really have noble character and unquestionable integrity. This old man has lived for a lifetime, but this is the first time I've seen a hero like you. You're a great hero. You're a great hero." Zhang Xiaohua was immediately promoted from Ren Xiaoxia to Hero Ren. Zhang Xiaohua never thought that Elder Zhang would be so enthusiastic and could only murmur, I just want to practice alchemy." Elder Zhang didn't seem to understand. He turned his head and said to Valley Master Nya, "Valley Master, you haven't done anything right in your life, but you did the right thing this time." Valley Head Nya smiled merrily and thought to himself, "Yes, I did the right thing in showing Rejuvenation Valley's pill recipe to virtuous nephew Run. You gave birth to 3 daughters. This is the only right thing you've done in your life." Elder Zhang continued. Although Valley Master Nya had already used the 1,000-pound drop and was mentally prepared, he still fell to the ground with a bang. After a long while, Valley Master Nya, who had always thought of himself as wise and mighty, stood up and complained, "Elder Zhang, you're also considered an old man in the valley. How could you speak of such a confidential matter in front of an outsider?" Elder Zhang's big hand still held Zhang Xiaohua's small hand with great enthusiasm. The wrinkles on his face were all smiles as he said, "How is Hero Ren an outsider? As long as you ask Little 3 to help. Wouldn't this guy be born a member of Rejuvenation Valley and dead a member of Rejuvenation Valley?" Then he turned his head and smiled at Zhang Xiaohua. "Besides Hero Run, the two of us met very late. This old man, and you could be considered friends despite the difference in age. How can you say that I'm an outsider?" Feeling the eagerness in Elder Zhang's hand, Zhang Xiaohua shrank her body and pulled her small hand back. She secretly said, "He just hit me with a dart, and now he's trying to get close to me. Does this old man have some ulterior motives?" Oh, that's right. She seemed to have thought of something. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua didn't pull her hand back. She smiled and said, "If Elder Zhang has something to say, there's no harm in saying it. If it's not troublesome, this junior will definitely agree." That was others didn't know, but Zhang Xiaohua's heart was as clear as a mirror. She had received benefits from others, so how could she not repay? Seeing Zhang Xiaohua being so straightforward, Elder Zhang was a little incredulous. He trembled a little and said, "Hero Run, do you mean what you say?" Zhang Xiaohua shook her head, and a few strands of hair in front of her forehead swayed with the wind. She said, "Elder, do you think this junior is that kind of person? It doesn't look like it. It doesn't look like it." Elder Zhang said repeatedly. Then he still didn't believe her and asked, "Then, can Hero Ren agree to this old man's condition?" Zhang Xiaohua said loudly, "No problem. This junior has long known your thoughts. You are the paving stone of the alchemy world. You have done so much basic work. How can this junior not agree to such a small request? Later on, you could just look for Valley Master Nya. I've entrusted everything to him." Her voice was loud and seemed to be really generous. But when Elder Zhang heard this, he was stunned and said, "Hero Run, are you mistaken?" Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand indifferently and said, "I'm not mistaken. Don't worry, Elder, Valley Master Nya won't let you down." But Elder Zhang smiled bitterly and said, "Valley Master can't do it. Okay, if I say it's okay, then it's okay." Zhang Xiaohua now had the bearing of a leader. But Elder Zhang was still a little hesitant. Zhang Xiaohua still waved her hand and said, "No buts." At this time, Elder Zhang said pitifully, "Hero Ren, but I just want you to help me refine the Crimson Flame Pill." Zhang Xiaohua proudly waved her hand halfway and put it down dispiritedly. She couldn't believe her ears and said, "Elder Zhang only wants me to refine the Crimson Flame Pill." Yes. Elder Zhang felt wronged and said, "My request doesn't seem to be that high, right? Didn't you want me to teach you the method of refining the pill?" Zhang Xiaohua still didn't believe him. Elder Zhang pursed his lips and said, This method must be Hero Ren's unique skill. How would I dare to be delusional? Moreover, after a long time, he said, I've never married in my life and don't even have child. Where can I find a granddaughter to match you? Zhang Xiaohua heard this and rolled her eyes. She went straight back to lie down. Fortunately, Elder Zhang held her arms enthusiastically and she didn't fall. This can be taught, Elder Zhang. I don't want a granddaughter or maternal granddaughter. Zhang Xiaohua said helplessly. Ah, really? Elder Zhang said excitedly. I want to tell you, but I'm afraid of losing face. All right, Hero Ren, you're really worthy of being a hero. I'll thank you. After he finished speaking, he pulled out his hands and was about to bow. Zhang Xiaohua's body wasn't stable at this time. When she pulled her hands out, her body immediately tilted to the side. Poor Zhang Xiaohua's martial arts were high, but she was beaten to this extent. Oh, intersection of corner section. Oh ha! However, Elder Zhang grabbed Zhang Xiaohua's hands like lightning and steadied her body. He said with a bitter face, There's another problem, Hero Ren. Even if I learn the method you've taught me, whether or not I can refine the Crimson Flame Pill is another matter. There's only one Scarlet Flame Grass in the entire Rejuvenation Valley. If we waste it, we won't be able to refine it again. Zhang Xiaohua understood that he had seen the recipe for the Crimson Flame Pill before. The refining method inside was just a simulation of the immortal Tao's refining method and was far from the authentic method he had learned. If she refined according to Elder Zhang's recipe, there was an 80 to 90% chance that she would fail. However, she hadn't practiced the second refining method in the Jade Scroll, so she naturally couldn't agree rashly. Thus, Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment and smiled. Elder Zhang, I understand your feelings. However, from what I've seen just now, the refining of the Crimson Flame Pill isn't that simple. I don't have full confidence. When Elder Zhang heard this, his eyes lit up and he eagerly asked, Then how confident are you, Hero Ren? After thinking for a moment, Zhang Xiaohua extended 4 fingers. Elder Zhang smiled and said, 40% is enough. Zhang Xiaohua shook her head and said, 40% is enough to mess it up. Valley Master Nie's eyes lit up even more, and he said with a smile, Nephew Ren is so confident? Zhang Xiaohua still shook her head and said, I need a few things. Perhaps there are some things that I have more confidence in. What do you need? What does Nie Qian have? Quick, Valley Master, call your daughter over. Elder Zhang said hurriedly. Zhang Xiaohua and Valley Master Nie both collapsed. Zhang Xiaohua steadied her body and said, Elder Zhang is thinking too much. I just want to take advantage of Rejuvenation Valley's superior conditions to practice more and master the art of refining pills. This doesn't go against Elder Zhang's request. As long as I can refine the various pills of Rejuvenation Valley, I will definitely accumulate a lot of experience in refining pills. Then, when I refine the Crimson Flame Pill, I will have more confidence. Chapter 468. Hearing this, Valley Master Nie suddenly understood. That's right, Zhang Xiaohua didn't mention any conditions at the beginning. She just wanted to use the pill recipe to refine pills. As long as she was familiar with the pill recipe, she would be able to refine the Crimson Flame Pill easily. At this time, Elder Zhang smiled and said, Since Hero Ren already has a plan, why don't you demonstrate to me how to refine pills using the ancient method? I read in the book that it was extremely baffling. You must have seen the Valley Master refine pills. We don't even know how to control the temperature freely. Zhang Xiaohua glanced at Valley Master Nie and saw him make a pleased gesture. Zhang Xiaohua nodded slightly and said, Then I'll have to trouble Uncle Nie to prepare the herbs. Valley Master Nie also laughed and said, I've already prepared them. After saying that, he instructed the disciples outside the bamboo house to bring in some of the herbs that had just been dug out. Zhang Xiaohua sighed inwardly. These old people are all shrewd. They knew that Elder Zhang might not believe them and had already prepared them. Elder Zhang was also very happy to see this. What he saw just now was the formation of the pills, but how the pills were formed was even more important. As the ancient said, care about the process, don't just focus on the results. Elder Zhang quickly said, Hero Run, behind my bamboo house is the pill room. It's also one of the earliest pill rooms in Rejuvenation Valley. Do you think it's suitable? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, Elder Zhang, you're a senior in the alchemy world. Don't be so polite with me. You're too kind. Since you're better at alchemy than me, I should respect you. Elder Zhang shook his head and said, Moreover, you're magnanimous and can be called a hero. But your attainments in the field of medicinal herbs are far beyond this junior's reach. Zhang Xiaohua admired Elder Zhang's hard work. Hearing this, Elder Zhang was very stunned and said in surprise, I didn't expect Hero Run to be able to see so far. You really know me well. I only knew this when I was very old. Zhang Xiaohua was speechless. That's right, you have all kinds of books on medicinal herbs and know all kinds of alchemy techniques. What about me? After obtaining the pill forging technique, but not knowing the names of the ancient medicinal herbs, one would naturally realize the importance of studying medicinal herbs. Then, Elder Zhang walked to the side of the table and picked up the ancient book on medicinal herbs that he had written. He respectfully handed it to Zhang Xiaohua and said, This book is a little bit of this old man's painstaking research. I hope Hero Run can correct it. Zhang Xiaohua also took it with a serious expression and said solemnly, I don't dare to say anything. Senior Zhang, this junior is lacking in this aspect. I should learn it well. Zhang Xiaohua received the ancient book and carefully placed it in her bosom. Only then did she enter Elder Zhang's pill room under his lead. This pill room was similar to Zhang Xiaohua's small pill room. However, there were two cauldrons, one large and one small, placed in a groove. Elder Zhang pointed at the larger cauldron and said, This is the cauldron that this old man used in his early years. The earth fire below, it is also first-rate. Hero Ren, take a look and see if you can use it. Zhang Xiaohua actually didn't care, but she still politely went forward to take a look. That cauldron was no different from Valley Master Nies. After she finished looking, she very casually looked at the smaller cauldron at the side. She suddenly discovered to her surprise that the cauldron didn't have two protrusions like the other cauldrons. After thinking for a moment, Zhang Xiaohua pointed at the small cauldron and asked, Elder Zhang, don't you use this cauldron? Elder Zhang took a look and said with a smile, This small cauldron was already here when my Rejuvenation Valley's ancestors discovered this pill room. Didn't I just say that this old man's pill room was one of the earliest pill rooms to be used? The things inside basically haven't changed. Even the cauldron and the earth fire below it haven't been touched. The earth fire and cauldrons in the other pill rooms have all been modified. However, this cauldron doesn't have any protrusions to control the temperature, so it's not suitable for use. This old man only tried it out at the beginning and didn't use it anymore. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, her heart stirred. She slowly walked to the front of the cauldron and poked her head out to take a closer look. Indeed, the inside and outside of this cauldron were almost exactly the same as the cauldron in her money pouch. When she used her divine sense to examine it again, she saw that there weren't any incantations inside the cauldron. Only some of the formations engraved inside the cauldron were the same as her cauldron. There was no need to guess. This cauldron was certainly a cauldron used by an immortal Tao pill refiner, just like Zhang Xiaohua's cauldron. A trace of a smile appeared on the corners of Zhang Xiaohua's mouth. What a coincidence! It was best to use an immortal Tao cauldron to refine the Crimson Flame pill, and Zhang Xiaohua's cauldron wasn't suitable for public use. Elder Zhang's cauldron that had never been used before was just right for her to use. Presumably, Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, This junior has also never seen a cauldron like this. If there's a chance, I would also like to try it out. Elder Zhang said, Anytime, anytime. If this cauldron wasn't used by Rejuvenation Valley's ancestors, and if it wasn't for the fact that you can't take it away, then what harm is there in giving it to you? Zhang Xiaohua cupped her hands and said, I wouldn't dare. This is Senior's relic, so it's best to treasure it. Finished speaking, she walked in front of the large cauldron and skillfully turned on the earth fire to preheat the cauldron. Looking at the medicinal herbs on the ground, she said with a smile, Uncle Nye seems to want this nephew to refine the White Nightmare pill. Valley Master Nye clapped his hands, and praised. Virtuous nephew Run has indeed reached a higher level in the Tao of pills. You've also carefully read the pill recipe that this old man had little you give you. Virtuous nephew is correct. These medicinal herbs are white chrysanthemum and black goldgrass. There are also a few other ingredients that are used to refine the white nightmare pill. Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. Uncle Nia is testing this nephew. This nephew has only seen the pill recipe a few times. If I mess up today, the two seniors won't laugh at me. Finished speaking, she no longer held back and placed her left hand on top of the cauldron. She transferred her vital energy over and carefully controlled the temperature of the cauldron. In fact, how could using vital energy to control the cauldron and then the fire be as convenient as directly casting the spell onto the earth fire? When the temperature was suitable, Zhang Xiaohua placed the white chrysanthemum, black goldgrass, and other medicinal herbs in order according to the pill recipe. In order to let Elder Zhang take a closer look and also to conceal something, Zhang Xiaohua controlled the temperature to not be too high. After a long while, the dark brown medicinal powder was gradually refined successfully. When Zhang Xiaohua's hands left the cauldron, Elder Zhang quickly walked forward and took out the medicinal powder from the bottom of the cauldron. He carefully looked at it. Just like before, he put some powder into his mouth and tasted it carefully. Zhang Xiaohua was sweating. This white nightmare pill had some aphrodisiac strengthening effects. If something happened to Elder Zhang, what should she do? After carefully examining it, Elder Zhang said, Actually, it's not that I have doubts in my heart. It's just that seeing is believing and hearing is false. Now that I've seen Hero Run refined pills with my own eyes, I know that I was a frog in a well. I didn't think that there would be such alchemy skills outside of Rejuvenation Valley. Zhang Xiaohua shook her head and said, This method is actually a martial art. It has nothing to do with alchemy. Elder Zhang and Valley Head Nia looked at each other in surprise. What kind of martial art was this? It actually had such an effect. Immediately, Elder Zhang's eyes were somewhat fiery as he asked, Hero Run, this method, when will you teach me? Zhang Xiaohua said, I've already said it just now. I've already copied this method to Uncle Nia and asked him to take it out for you to comprehend. All right, it's still the same sentence. This method is very important and must not be leaked. It will bring disaster to your noble valley. Valley Head Nia was somewhat surprised and said, Is it that serious? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, If Uncle Nia feels that it's inappropriate, then return the method to me. Valley Head Nia looked at Elder Zhang. Both of their eyes were resolute. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua said again, Although this method is not easy to leak, Uncle Nia and Elder Zhang only refine pills in Rejuvenation Valley. Even if others see it with their own eyes, they may not know the secret. It's fine as long as no one knows about the method. Valley Head Nia and Elder Zhang both nodded and said, We also have the same idea. It's just that. Elder Zhang was a little worried and said, If I were to refine pills using the ancient method, wouldn't those old bastards beside me and the Valley Master senior brothers be jealous when they see it? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, This is something that Uncle Nia and Senior Zhang have to consider. Oh, right, Elder Zhang, this junior wants to take this small cauldron furnace and study it. Oh, don't worry, I'm just trying it out in the pill room. I won't take it out of the valley. Elder Zhang thought for a moment and said, Yes, Hero Ren, be careful. Just don't break it. Zhang Xiaohua secretly laughed. It would be strange if this immortal item could be so easily damaged. Valley Head Nia called a few disciples outside the room to send the small cauldron to Zhang Xiaohua's pill room. Zhang Xiaohua asked Elder Zhang a few more questions about medicinal herbs and then cupped her hands and said, Seniors, this junior is a bit tired and will go back to rest for a while. Elder Zhang might as well ask Uncle Nia about the method of cultivation. If there are any questions, this junior will come tomorrow to clear them up. Elder Zhang's face bloomed with a smile and said, No need. If this old man has anything he doesn't understand, I'll ask you later. Zhang Xiaohua hesitated and said, This junior sleeps very hard and may not hear Elder Zhang's call. Valley Head Nia said, No matter, I've also practiced for a while. Presumably, today is enough to discuss with Elder Zhang. If there's anything, we can talk about it tomorrow. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said goodbye to the two and returned to her pill room. In the pill room, the small cauldron had already been placed next to the groove, along with the remaining medicinal herbs. Zhang Xiaohua only looked at it casually and then sat cross-legged on the bed. With a face full of excitement, she took out the thin jade slip that she had obtained from Elder Zhang and immersed her divine sense into it. What came in her mind were 4 ancient characters, 100 Herbs Compendium. Previously, when she was in Elder Zhang's room, she didn't look at it carefully. Now that she looked at it carefully, Zhang Xiaohua's smile became wider and wider. This 100 Herbs Compendium didn't just record 100 types of medicinal herbs. Chapter 469. Indeed, the immortal Tao had been annihilated for tens of thousands of years, and the art of alchemy had also gradually died out. All kinds of alchemy techniques had been modified to suit the rules of martial arts. During these tens of thousands of years, the changes in medicinal herbs had also been huge. Only the names were completely different. The jade slip that Zhang Xiaohua now had was the authentic alchemy technique used by the immortal Tao. Although the contents were passed down directly, the medicinal herbs used were also completely different from the current system. Therefore, if Zhang Xiaohua did not have this 100 Herbs Compendium, even if the authentic medicinal herbs were placed in front of Zhang Xiaohua, he might not be able to tell that these were the medicinal herbs specified in the prescription. This 100 Herbs Compendium was a timely rain that had delivered the thing that Zhang Xiaohua dreamed of. Originally, he still wanted to ask Elder Zhang for advice on the ancient and modern names of various medicinal herbs. Now, he only needed to find the correct medicinal herbs according to the picture. The name? It was just a title. The jade slip of the 100 Herbs Compendium was very thin, but the contents were very vast. It recorded countless medicinal herb knowledge, which was enough for Zhang Xiaohua to learn. Seeing that it was still early, Zhang Xiaohua began to slowly memorize and learn. The next day, Nie Qinyu came to the alchemy room punctually and brought a lot of medicinal herbs. When she saw Zhang Xiaohua, she was no longer annoyed like yesterday. She smiled and said, "Big brother Run, I heard from father that you had a fight with Elder Zhang's Big White yesterday." Zhang Xiaohua scratched his head and said, "What are you talking about? Little fish Nya, how can you talk like that? What kind of person is this Xiaoxia? How can I lower myself to the level of a little white wolf? If it wasn't for Elder Zhang's timely appearance, I would have flattened it with just a few punches and kicks. How can there be the posture of a fight that you mentioned?" Nie Qinyu pursed her lips and smiled. "Big brother Run, you're really something. Big White is considered a tyrant in the valley and always bullies other animals. It's also Elder Zhang's favorite and is always pampered. After what you did yesterday, it'll probably behave for a while." Thinking about it, Big White was so aggressive yesterday. It was only because Zhang Xiaohua's martial arts were strong that she didn't suffer under the wolf's claws. If it was someone else, it might not have been so. However, thinking about Big White's tragic defeat yesterday and how he wanted to die together with her, Zhang Xiaohua still nodded her head in admiration. After chatting with Zhang Xiaohua for a while, Nie Qinyu blushed and said, "Elder Zhang, you called me to my father's place last night and said a lot of things for no reason." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Is that so? He must have imparted his years of experience in digging herbs in the valley to you." "Bah," Nie Qinyu couldn't help but spit. "I wanted to ask Elder Zhang for advice, but he was fascinated by the method you taught my father. After telling me about it, he kept pestering my father with questions." After hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. She said seriously, "Little fishy Nya, that method is very important. You have to remember, other than your father's instructions, you can't tell anyone else. Especially," after thinking for a while, she smiled bitterly and said, "I didn't want to talk too much about the affairs of your Rejuvenation Valley. Don't blame me for being nosy, but don't tell your 2 sisters." "Sisters?" Nie Qinyu exclaimed. "Big brother Run, do you have a prejudice against my sisters? You've only met them once." "Oh, is it because you don't want to go up on stage and compete with Big Sister?" This question was rather childish. Of course, Nye Qingyu only wanted to ask Zhang Xiaohua the reason. This was just throwing a brick to attract Jade. Zhang Xiaohua shook her head and said, "Based on what you said, I've only met your two sisters once. How could I have a prejudice against them? It's just that both of them have married outside the valley. They may keep a secret, but if they don't keep it a secret, it may spread out. It won't be good for Rejuvenation Valley." But Nye Qingyu stared at Zhang Xiaohua and said, "If this method is from your Beidou school, it'll just be you leaking your school's method. When the time comes, I'll ask my father to stake Rejuvenation Valley's business. I'm sure your school won't necessarily be unable to forgive you, but I don't remember you saying this that day. Could it be that this method—" It had to be said that Zhang Xiaohua's repeated exhortations finally aroused Nye Qinyu's suspicions. She thought of the origin of the method. Zhang Xiaohua's expression turned serious and said, "The origin of this method is somewhat unclear. However, since it can bring about fundamental changes to Rejuvenation Valley's pill refinement, do you think Valley Head Nye can refuse? Do you think I can keep it from you?" Nye Qingyu gave a long sigh and said, "That's right. Thank you, Big Brother Rin. Even though he knows it's drinking poison to quench his thirst, my father can't refuse. Big Brother Rin also has great good intentions. I understand." Hearing that she was going to speak again, Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly waved her hand and said, "Yesterday, I already told Valley Head Nye and Elder Zhang that this method can only be used to refine pills. Others definitely won't be able to see through it. It's fine as long as no one knows about this method. I'm only telling you today because I want you to pay attention to keeping it a secret. I know, last time, when Senior Brother Liu from the weapon refining sect came to provoke me, I was already vigilant. If it wasn't for someone deliberately saying something, how would he know to compete with you in strength? I just want you to know that this Rejuvenation Valley isn't a paradise and that you should leave earlier." Seeing that Nye Qingyu was already aware, Zhang Xiaohua didn't say anything else. She pointed at a large pile of medicinal herbs and said, "It seems that Valley Head Nye wants to make use of my free labor. Nye Qingyu, what kind of pills are we going to refine today?" Nye Qingyu rolled her eyes at Zhang Xiaohua and said with a smile, "If Big Brother Rin doesn't like it, how about 3 maces of silver per day? What do you think?" "Oh my," Zhang Xiaohua also rolled her eyes and said, "That method of yours is a regular person's hourly payment. This great hero is an expert. No matter what, I have to be paid according to my labor. How about 1 maces of gold for each pill recipe refined?" "Bah," Nye Qingyu spat. "In your dreams." Zhang Xiaohua laughed loudly. She picked up some medicinal herbs from the ground and walked toward the cauldron while shaking her head and muttering, "Squeeze, pure squeeze." Nye Qingyu pursed her lips and smiled, following behind her. Today's pill refining speed was still very fast. Although Nye Qingyu had already prepared a considerable amount of medicinal herbs, more than 10 pill recipes were completely refined in one morning. Watching the disciples put the pills into the porcelain bottles, Nye Qingyu smiled bitterly and said, "Big Brother Rin, your method of refining is somewhat inappropriate." Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua also smiled and said, "So you can see it too. Nye Qingyu, why didn't you tell me about it?" Nye Qingyu said, "I know that Big Brother Rin wants to practice his alchemy techniques, but if you practice pill formulas one by one, you will be refining pills for our Rejuvenation Valley. It won't improve your alchemy skills much. If you continue to practice like this, our Rejuvenation Valley will really have to reward you." Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, "That's right. At first, I also wanted to refine the pill formulas one by one, but the plan couldn't keep up with the changes. Before I finished refining this pill formula, I discovered that something was wrong." "That's right. Big Brother Rin, almost all the pill recipes in this book are refining methods. You only need to refine a few of them, and you'll be able to refine the rest. There's no need to practice all the pill recipes once." "Exactly," Zhang Xiaohua said resolutely and decisively. "Then how about this?" Nye Qingyu hesitated and said, "Our Rejuvenation Valley has hundreds and thousands of pill recipes. How is it appropriate for you to practice like this? Why go back tonight? I will talk to Father. You don't have to practice all of them. I will pick out different pill recipes with different techniques, or concocting methods. Big Brother Ren only needs to successfully refine the representative pills. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua was very moved and almost had the urge to reach out and scratch her nose. She smiled and said, "How can Valley Master Nie agree? You don't need to work for nothing?" "Bah," Nie Qinyu spat and said, "Do you think everyone will squeeze you dry like a coolie?" As she said this, her face turned red first. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, "Then I will have to trouble little you. Take this pill recipe book away tomorrow. I will carefully look through it again and refine some pills for myself. It's so pitiful. Just now I was working for others, and in a while I will be working for my own family." "Uffed," Nie Qinyu laughed and said, "Okay, Big Brother Ren, you refine the pills. I will go back and tell Father that I will find the pill recipes for you tomorrow this afternoon." "Okay, I will have to trouble you, little you er. However, I still want to see all the pill recipes. You must not hide them." "Okay." Nie Qinyu dragged her voice and said, "I will remember. I am Rejuvenation Valley's coolie." Saying this, she ran out with flushed cheeks. Looking at Nie Qinyu's lively back, Zhang Xiaohua rubbed his nose and smiled bitterly. "Do I have such great charm?" After closing the door, Zhang Xiaohua didn't hurry to refine pills. He sat cross-legged on the praying mat and comprehended the Tao of heaven. After a long time, with an unfathomable smile on his face, he stood up and walked to the pill furnace in the groove. After a while, he would use this pill furnace to refine pills, so it was better to practice first. Looking at the pill furnace in the groove, Zhang Xiaohua used the usual methods to shrink and enlarge the pill furnace, but the pill furnace didn't have any reaction. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but frown. He had thought that this method would work on all pill furnaces. Fortunately, when he ignited the earth fire and injected the flame control spell, the temperature of the cauldron gradually rose. Then, he added the herbs and a few common spells into the cauldron. The herbs gradually melted, and Zhang Xiaohua's heart was at ease. It seemed that the method to shrink the pill furnace was unique to his own pill furnace, and the method to refine pills was universal. According to the records of the second pill refining method in the Jade Slip, Zhang Xiaohua successfully refined more than 10 types of pills in a short time. That was because the second method was used to refine top-grade pills by the Immortal Tao. Zhang Xiaohua's pills were not only for martial Tao, but also for elementary pills. Using this method was really a small test. Then, Zhang Xiaohua recorded his experience in refining these pills, as well as the flaws of the 5 elements, on the Jade Slip. Then, he took out the pill recipe booklet and recorded the remaining pill recipes on the Jade Slip. Only then did he stop. After all, he had just discovered the Tao of the 5 elements in pills. He could only reach the final conclusion after a large amount of practice. Chapter 470. Finding the attributes of every single herb was not something that could be done in a short period of time, or even in a few years. It could only be done slowly and using an extremely long period of time. As for the question of how herbs that were originally of the wood attribute could have attributes of the 5 elements, Zhang Xiaohua had some vague ideas. For example, the scarlet firegrass was red in color, and there was no vegetation growing in its surroundings. Even the soil would turn to stone, so it was obviously of the fire attribute. The 2 main ingredients of the crimson flame pill, the crimson pearlgrass, complemented the fire attribute scarlet firegrass, so it was definitely of the water attribute. Of course, there were even more herbs that could not be directly identified from their appearance, so it was impossible to directly determine their attributes. The Qi practitioners of the Path of Immortals were very resourceful, and they had come into contact with many more herbs than the Qi practitioners of the Path of Immortals. If Zhang Xiaohua did not use any special techniques and only tried using his stupid method, who knew when he would be able to tell the difference? And how could the art of herbal medicine be able to clearly identify the attributes of dried herbs? Firstly, there were limited types of herbs. Secondly, different people would fall sick every day. It was very easy to obtain results through large amounts of practice. Even so, the art of herbal medicine had only reached its current scale after several thousand years. Zhang Xiaohua engraved the pill recipe and her own experiences into the jade slip. After expending some of her spiritual sense, she stowed the jade slip away and began to cultivate the God's Guide. Ever since she began using her spiritual sense to write jade slips, Zhang Xiaohua knew that apart from true qi, the spiritual sense was extremely important in the path of immortality. She had only just come into contact with the path of immortality, so she might have to use her spiritual sense in many places in the future. As a result, she cultivated the God's Guide every day. After a while, she finished replenishing her spiritual sense. Zhang Xiaohua felt that her spiritual sense had improved slightly, and the God's Guide had also improved slightly. Just as she was about to stand up, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly thought of the mnemonic chant recorded in the appendix of the God's Guide jade slip to conceal her cultivation and spiritual sense. When Zhang Xiaohua saw it that day, she didn't think much of it. The way of immortality that she cultivated was just a legend in Jianghu. No one had seen it before. It would only appear when she used the way of immortality to fight with others. How could anyone discover it on a normal day? This incantation was completely useless to him. Now that his mind was moved and he thought of this, he felt that something wasn't right. After a period of time, he would have to spread the incense cult alone. The Aroma sect was a colossus. It was a super sect with a legacy of 10,000 years. When Zhang Xiaohua was at Huanxi Manor, she had not felt the power of its legacy. But when she arrived at Rejuvenation Valley, she found that even a small faction like Rejuvenation Valley had old men like Elder Zhang, as well as some people she had never seen before. As a sect, the Aroma sect had stood tall in Jianghu for 10,000 years. How could it not have its own heritage? Who knew if there were some old monsters hidden in the Aroma sect that were over 100 years old? Moreover, it was the legacy of the way of immortality. Perhaps they had some secret method to see through a person's cultivation. She was unlucky to be seen through. However, she was in the Aroma sect under the banner of Rejuvenation Valley. Nominally, she was the son-in-law of Rejuvenation Valley. Wouldn't that be causing a lot of trouble for Rejuvenation Valley? Therefore, for her own sake, she still had to comprehend the mnemonic chant to conceal her cultivation and spiritual sense. Taking out the jade slip, Zhang Xiaohua carefully read it for the first time. The mnemonic chant was very long, about 2,000 words. It was abnormally cryptic. Zhang Xiaohua read it carefully, but didn't learn anything. He couldn't help but smile wryly. Well, the average cultivation method of the way of immortality was not easy to understand or practice. The difficulty of concealing one's cultivation could be imagined. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. She remembered that when she first started cultivating the Carefree Heart Sutra, it was abnormally simple. There were many things in the cultivation method that she didn't know how to understand. But after entering the way of immortality for several years, her aptitude seemed to have improved greatly. For example, the art of alchemy and the art of refining weapons. Although it was not easy, she could understand it carefully. Although she didn't have a master to guide her, she could still master it. Could the cultivation method of the way of immortality make people smarter? AI, who cares? Isn't it good to be smart? Zhang Xiaohua thought to himself. Who cares how it becomes smart? It's more important to comprehend the mnemonic chant. Then, Zhang Xiaohua closed her eyes and pondered the first part of the mnemonic chant word by word. In the blink of an eye, when Zhang Xiaohua stood up again, the sky had gradually darkened. Zhang Xiaohua sighed. Time was too short. She hadn't comprehended anything and the day was about to pass. How good would it be if she could find a place to cultivate alone and ignore the trivial matters of the world? But then this thought was strangled. Her mother, father, and other family members, Oyen, Qiutong, Wenwenhai, and the others' dreams, and Niechinyu, all of them entered her mind. Zhang Xiaohua shook her head and couldn't help but smile. The world is so beautiful. Why don't I miss it? Cultivation is cultivation. Entering the world is also cultivating the heart. Tao follows nature. Tao follows nature. Then, She felt the true qi in her body surge violently. Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed and hurriedly took out a jade talisman to set up a formation around the pill room. Then, she took out 2 origin stones. After thinking for a moment, she threw out the crouching ox stone and sat cross-legged on it. It was rare for her to cultivate the Carefree Heart Sutra during the day. Ever since Zhang Xiaohua entered Rejuvenation Valley, she had been persistently comprehending the Tao of Heaven and made up for her lack of understanding of the Tao of Heaven with the Qi Huang art. She also continuously improved in the areas of pill refinement and weapon forging. Most importantly, she had to refine Starlight and absorb Origin Qi every night to cultivate the Carefree Heart Sutra. Her accumulation in these few months was quite deep, so when she gained something in her temperament, her mental cultivation method also improved. In the dimly lit pill room, Zhang Xiaohua's face was expressionless. She held a piece of origin stone in each hand, and all the pores on her body opened up, greedily absorbing the surrounding origin qi. When the origin qi in the pill room was completely absorbed, the origin qi in Rejuvenation Valley rushed toward the pill room. And now, Zhang Xiaohua's speed of drawing qi was very fast. Although the origin qi in the valley was much more than outside, it was too thin for Zhang Xiaohua. If Zhang Xiaohua greedily absorbed it, it would most likely cause irreparable harm to the medicinal herbs in the valley. At this moment, the results of Zhang Xiaohua's daily hard work in comprehending the Tao of Heaven appeared at this moment. The refined origin qi in her body and the circulating vital qi in her meridians gradually changed under the influence of the Tao of Heaven. These changes were almost undetectable, but it was also these changes that caused Zhang Xiaohua's entire body to be branded with traces of the Tao of Heaven. Didn't the Qi Huang art mention the theory of the 5 elements? The 5 organs in the body were all of the 5 elements, and the 5 elements were some kind of rule of the Tao of Heaven. Under Zhang Xiaohua's comprehension of the Tao of Heaven, her body gradually showed signs of conforming to the Tao of Heaven. Although these signs were extremely small, they caused a chain of changes, such as the absorption of vital qi and origin qi. The crouching ox stone that Zhang Xiaohua was sitting on originally had a fixed speed of the qi of heaven and earth that was being drawn into her body. However, due to the slight change in the way that Zhang Xiaohua absorbed the origin qi, the qi of heaven and earth in the crouching ox stone suddenly seemed to have been summoned by something. It surged out of the crouching ox stone like a tide and crazily poured into Zhang Xiaohua's pores. The origin qi in Rejuvenation Valley surged into the elixir room, but this meager amount of origin qi could no longer attract Zhang Xiaohua's attention, so she did not absorb it. When the wild origin qi in the crouching ox stone entered her body, it immediately submitted to the radiance of the Tao of Heaven. It followed the meridians in her body and flashed in a regular pattern. It seemed slow, but was actually very fast and sometimes slow. After an indeterminate amount of time had passed, countless rays of starlight shone down from the night sky, penetrating through the stone walls and enveloping Zhang Xiaohua's surroundings. At this moment, the starlight was surging. The refined starlight fused with his meridians, fused with his primary energy, and fused with his transparent bones. As the starlight fused with his bones, the red dots gradually increased in number, almost imperceptibly. In the Mud Pill Palace, the layer of golden array talismans on the essence of herbalism suddenly sped up and emitted a mysterious wave. The starlight outside Zhang Xiaohua's body also seemed to have been summoned and was directly drawn into the golden talismans without any refinement. The talismans that had absorbed the starlight emitted a faint radiance. After spinning a few times, fine golden rays of light were emitted from each talisman and entered the tiny core in the middle of the essence of herbalism. The core became more stable, and the essence of herbalism seemed to have been replenished. It was mobilized more powerfully, and there were faint traces of the Tao of Heaven in its movements. Everything was so harmonious. Under the enlightenment of the Tao of Heaven, she was progressing in an orderly manner. She cultivated until dawn. Zhang Xiaohua opened her eyes. The flame in her eyes flickered abnormally. Zhang Xiaohua put away the crouching ox stone and pocketed the vitality stones. Only then did she check her cultivation level. This check was not a big deal, but it really made Zhang Xiaohua's jaw drop. Previously on the deserted island, he had broken through to the 6th level. Then, he had slowly wandered around the early stages of the 6th level. He had not broken through for a long time. However, he also knew that this was a transition from the early stages of the qi refining stage to the middle stages of the qi refining stage. It was a change in the way of cultivation and could not be rushed. Earlier, there had been various signs of a breakthrough. That was why he took out the crouching ox stone yesterday and wanted to raise his cultivation level to the middle stages of the 6th level. But now, after a brief check, the vital energy in his body was surging. His vital energy flowed freely in his mind. The bottleneck of the 7th level was faintly visible. Was this not a sign of the peak of the 6th level? Could it be that last night's cultivation had directly skipped the middle stages of the 6th level? Zhang Xiaohua was a little incredulous. Ever since he started cultivating, he had always been down to earth, taking one step at a time. This sudden big step was not something he was used to. So, he immediately sat down cross-legged and carefully observed to see if there was anything strange. After a long examination, he did not find anything wrong. Everything was normal. However, he felt that there was something different from before. He felt that this normal was not the same as before. Suddenly, he laughed. He understood what was going on. Chapter 471. Zhang Xiaohua thought for a long time, and he suddenly understood why he felt that the true qi in his body was different from before. This difference was that the current true qi flow was too natural. It was as if this true qi was born to flow like this. There was no need for him to control it at all. Before this, the true qi flow was under Zhang Xiaohua's deliberate command. According to the records of the Carefree Heart Sutra, the true qi flowed in the orderly meridians. Now, although the order of the meridians was the same, the true qi flow had some subtle differences. Some meridians were faster, and some were slower. These speeds might not be the real speed, but it was the speed that Zhang Xiaohua perceived in his heart. This thing seems very familiar. Zhang Xiaohua thought for a moment and understood. Isn't there the taste of heaven's way in here? Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua immediately understood that his cultivation advancing by leaps and bounds should be related to his comprehension of heaven's way during this time. Perhaps it was the result of a thin and thick head. In fact, it was precisely so. The improvement of cultivation was related to the state of mind. The higher the state of mind, the faster the cultivation. The state of mind was just a side of one's cultivation in heaven's way. The comprehension of heaven's way directly affected the cultivation of the state of mind. This state of mind cultivation had a huge impact on Zhang Xiaohua, a rookie who had just reached the initial stage of qi refining. It was just a few months of comprehension of heaven's way, and he directly improved his cultivation by a big step. Zhang Xiaohua seemed to understand some of the relationships, but then he had a new discovery. Under heaven's way, the flow of true qi was very harmonious. This inspired Zhang Xiaohua a lot. Yesterday, when he read the mnemonic to hide his cultivation, he was always puzzled. Now, referring to last night's progress, he felt that he seemed to have found the direction of a breakthrough. Striking while the iron was hot, Zhang Xiaohua took out the mnemonic again and studied it in detail. Zhang Xiaohua didn't put the jade slip away until the sky was bright. It was naturally impossible to make any progress in such a short time, but the smile on his face revealed the gains in his heart. After removing the formation in the pill room, Zhang Xiaohua happily practiced the Big Dipper Divine Fist. She looked at the sky and thought, "Little fish Nye should be here by now, right?" When he reached the entrance of the pill chamber, he saw Nye Qinyu walking over with a few disciples. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua coming out of the pill room, Nye Qinyu asked happily, "Did Brotherin sense my presence again?" Zhang Xiaohua shook her head and said, I just woke up and wanted to take a walk. Then, she looked at Niet Xinyu's eyes and asked in surprise, "Little fish, what's wrong with your eyes?" Her hair was a little dark, and her eyes were a little bloodshot. Did she have insomnia last night? I heard that the most important way for a woman to maintain her beauty is to sleep. Niet Xinyu rolled her eyes at him and said, "It's nothing. I just wanted to pick out a pill formula for you. So, I slept a little late last night. It's okay." Zhang Xiaohua felt warm in his heart and cupped his hands. "Little fish, it's been hard on you." Niet Xinyu's eyes reddened. "You still have a conscience. You saw that I slept late and still remembered to come out and welcome me. Forget it. This bit of trouble is worth it." Zhang Xiaohua didn't know what to say and only sighed in her heart. But at this moment, Niet Xinyu suddenly frowned and looked at Zhang Xiaohua strangely. Zhang Xiaohua touched her nose, her face, and even her hair, but didn't see any ash or firewood. She could only look at Niet Xinyu strangely. Niet Xinyu felt embarrassed and rebuked. "Why are you staring at me?" Zhang Xiaohua responded like a bug and said, "Yeah, why are you staring at me?" Niet Xinyu giggled and said, "It's strange, big brother Ren. No matter how I look at you, you look different from yesterday. However, your nose and eyebrows are normal. Could it be that your temperament has changed?" But then she smiled and said, "But temperament can't be changed in a day." Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that the great improvement in cultivation last night had such a miraculous effect? Could it really attract the attention of girls? He couldn't help but shake his hair and say with a smile, "I didn't expect that Rin Xiaoyao, would have such a glorious day." "Ha ha!" Niet Xinyu laughed and said, "Big brother Rin, the more I look at you, the more you look like the person who only learned the 3-character classic for a few months." Bang! Zhang Xiaohua fell to the ground. It turned out that she had regressed. In fact, Niet Xinyu was exaggerating a lot. After last night's practice, Zhang Xiaohua's cultivation had improved greatly. The vital qi in her body and the elixir core in her mud pill palace were closer to the way of heaven and had returned to her original state. Of course, this was only a night's practice. How could there be such an earth-shaking change? If Niet Xinyu didn't care so much about Zhang Xiaohua, how could she see the clues? Seeing Zhang Xiaohua stand up awkwardly, Niet Xinyu walked up to him and helped him wipe the dust off. She said with a smile, "Big brother Ren, do you have to be like this? As the saying goes, gold on the outside is rotten on the inside. You're 100 times better than them." Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua almost fell again. Niet Xinyu covered her mouth and said, "Okay, big brother Ren, I won't tease you anymore. I'll tell you about the elixir I'm going to refine today." Sure enough, the elixir today was different from the previous days. The steps were slightly more complicated, and there were more herbs. When Zhang Xiaohua used the Rejuvenation Valley's cauldron to refine the elixir, there were some difficulties. However, it was this setback that made Zhang Xiaohua's elixir refinement progress. The elixir refinement of the Way of Immortality was much more advanced than that of the Way of Martial Arts. However, it mainly relied on the control of spells. The fine control of temperature between the eyes and the hands was somewhat clumsy. It was just like how some martial arts moves were more exquisite than the Way of Immortality. As a result, Zhang Xiaohua's elixir refinement speed slowed down slightly. In addition, Niet Xinyu brought a lot of herbs, so she couldn't finish refining in the morning. Niet Xinyu accompanied Zhang Xiaohua with a smile, thinking that she had arranged everything properly. For the next 10 days or so, Niet Xinyu was like this. She constantly increased the difficulty of the elixir formula and increased the number of herbs. She could always spend most of the day in Zhang Xiaohua's elixir room. Zhang Xiaohua only had time to refine her own elixir after she finished the homework that Niet Xinyu gave her. Looking at Niet Xinyu's appearance, Zhang Xiaohua often complained, "I become an old cow in the Rejuvenation Valley. I eat grass and flow milk." However, it was also this kind of hard work that not only did Zhang Xiaohua become more proficient in the elixir refinement method of martial arts, but she also comprehended the elixir refinement method of the way of immortality by analogy. She also had more understanding that her predecessors didn't have. The days passed by happily just like that night, when Zhang Xiaohua was using the cauldron to practice the Rejuvenation Valley's secret elixir, 3 Purities Elixir. The Rejuvenation Valley's main hall was bustling with noise and excitement. This was the meeting hall that Zhang Xiaohua saw for the first time in the Rejuvenation Valley. In the main hall, Valley Master Nye sat on the main seat. On the guest seats on both sides, there were 6 people of different heights, short, fat, and thin. Behind them, there were also a few disciples in martial arts attire who stood solemnly. On Valley Master Nye's left was a skinny man in his 50s. He was dressed in martial arts attire and said in surprise, "Second brother Nye, are you really going to do this? This concerns the Rejuvenation Valley. If this guy has any ill intentions towards the incense sect and makes them unhappy, not only the Rejuvenation Valley, but the entire Jade Foundation Alliance will be in extreme danger." Valley Master Nye looked at the man with a smile and said, "Third brotherswa, it seems like you still don't have much confidence in your second brother." Third brother C said stubbornly, "That's true, second brother Nye. When little you got into trouble previously, our entire Jasper Flower Horse Farm was going to be mobilized. But you insisted that we stay in the horse farm and not move around. Then you started some stupid martial arts competition to find a groom. You made a mess and almost got into trouble." At this moment, the old man with white hair and a messy beard who was sitting next to Valley Master Nye said, "Third brotherswa, why don't you understand your second brother Nye's intentions? Isn't he just afraid that he'll fall for their trick of luring the tiger away from the mountain? Isn't he going to destroy our Jade Foundation Alliance while everyone is busy saving little you?" "Big brother C, I know that too. But I just feel that second brother Nye doesn't treat me as a brother. Seeing that little you is missing, I can't help it all." Big brother C said with a smile, "Isn't our weapon forging sect the same? They don't let us help at all and only send out a few disciples to scout for information." A short and shrewd man sitting next to him said, "How many times have I advised you? Third brotherswa, our Jade Foundation Alliance is bound together for good or ill. How can second brother Nye not treat us as brothers? Isn't it just because he knows that there's no news of little you and that the enemy is secretly plotting against us? He definitely didn't succeed. It's better for us to stay put than to make a move." Third brother C gave him a sideways glance and said, "Sixth brother Ing, don't talk about me now. Of course, isn't your Ing horse ranch ready to go as well?" "Ha, enough of that." Someone who looked like Butcher Lou stood up and said, "Our little niece is still the lucky one. Not only is she fine, she even managed to find a good son-in-law. I heard that his martial arts and physical strength are top-notch. Even our weapon-forging sex, little Lou, isn't his match." Finally, an ordinary-looking middle-aged man said with a smile, "Fourth brother formation is just joking. Think about it. This Ren Xiaoxia is someone who has overcome all obstacles and defeated 6 generals. He even became the Lord of the Spow's joust competition. How can an ordinary person compare to him? If our Jade Foundation Alliance had someone like him, second brother Nye wouldn't have racked his brains to come up with a countermeasure." The weapon-forging sect's fourth brother formation said mysteriously, "We didn't have such people before, but we can't say that we won't have any in the future. But this person is a good person and his martial arts are excellent. It's just that, second brother Nye, it's just that his background is really... You know, little Lou told me last time. I even paid special attention to the sects of the pugilistic world near Tanha City, but I didn't hear of any famous sections. Second brother Nye, you're here to scheme, so don't make any mistakes. Come and read more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading." Shouldn't you let this kid stay at your Tiger Subdue Horse Farm, Weapon Refinery Sect, and Garrison Horse Farm for a while? Who knows, he might be able to help you guys find some long-lost art. Si Yakong smiled and said, "I've had this thought for a long time. It's just that our Weapon Refinery Sect doesn't have a clever girl like Little You who can capture his thoughts." When Valley Head Nya heard this, he could only smile bitterly and said, "It's all luck, luck. Brothers, don't think too much. Our Rejuvenation Valley has discovered a long-lost art. Isn't our Jade Foundation Alliance the first to benefit from it? All right, Ing Lao Lu, when Sui Jin Dan is successfully refined, I'll personally give you a porcelain bottle. I guarantee that you'll be able to move it as you wish, and it'll be incomparably sturdy." Really? Ing Zhiju's eyes were filled with tears. He stepped forward and grabbed Valley Head Nya's hands, saying, "Family." Then he asked, "Second brother must have taken a lot of it back then, right? Go away." Valley Head Nya threw Ing Lao Lu to the side. Si Yakong said thoughtfully, "Second brother, from what you've said, you seem to have let him refine pills in your valley." "Ah, that's right, big brother." Valley Head Nya said excitedly. "You don't know, but this kid is really amazing." "Oh, maybe it's because his Beidou school is amazing. He doesn't seem to specialize in alchemy, but he's extremely talented in it. Take note, big brother, it's talent. When he first started refining, I could tell that he wasn't used to using that cauldron. That pill just now is refined by him." Ah, everyone was flabbergasted. Ing Zhiju didn't dare to believe it. He said, "The blood-replenishing pill you ate just now was much better than what I ate. Moreover, the pills you gave me were always refined by you. Could it be?" Everyone understood. That's right, having such a genius alchemist was something that Rejuvenation Valley yearned for even in their dreams. Moreover, Rejuvenation Valley was indebted to this person, and Rejuvenation Valley wanted him to marry into their family. Not only did he say how powerful his martial arts were, even his strength was the best of the best in the pugilistic world. Not to mention his chivalrous heart and benevolent attitude. He said that Ren Xiaoyao was the only one in the world. Si Yakong sneered. That's right. If Ren Xiaoyao had clenched his teeth, wouldn't he have handed over the weapon refining technique to him? Zhan Xian smiled apologetically. "Big brother, look at what you're saying. Isn't this nephew Ren the future son-in-law of Rejuvenation Valley? He's not an outsider. Moreover, I've already grounded Lu Meng for a few days. Even his senior brother wanted to come this time, but I didn't let him. I'm afraid they'll embarrass themselves again." Si Yakong laughed. "Why would I care about your weapon refining sex matters? It's just that when he heard that you've embarrassed the weapon refining sect, my disciple felt indignant and wanted to compete with Ren Xiaoyao in terms of strength." Ah, everyone present was shocked. Their eyes all turned towards the short man behind Si Yakong. Valley Head Nya smiled bitterly. He had thrown this matter to the back of his mind. He had forgotten that Su Zhuang and Lu Meng from the weapon refining sect, as well as Tong Ba from the weapon refining sect, were all people with extraordinary strength. They were all in their prime, and their qi and blood were at their peak. When they saw someone who could compete with them in terms of strength, how could they not come to their door? This was especially true for Tong Ba of the crafting sect. He had always been the strongest person in the Jade Foundation Alliance. Even Lu Meng paled in comparison to him. Now that someone even stronger than Lu Meng had suddenly appeared in Rejuvenation Valley, how could he possibly hold himself back? He had always valued Zhang Xiaohua's alchemy skills, but had cast her strength and martial arts aside. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 473. But Valley Master Nya still tried to persuade him. "Martial nephew Tong, your strength is publicly acknowledged in our alliance. Why do you care about some false reputation? Moreover, Nephew Run is a guest of Rejuvenation Valley. If you two compete in strength and hurt anyone, it won't be good. Don't let others see you as a joke." Then he waved his hand and said, "Let's leave this matter at that. Don't mention it again." Tong Ba glanced at his master and smiled. "Martial Uncle Nya, don't be afraid. It's just a competition of strength, not an arena. My future brother-in-law didn't lose out all in the arena. How could he lose out when he's competing with his own people?" Valley Master Nya looked at Tong Ba in surprise and then at Si Yakong, saying, "Why do you have to be like this?" Right now, our Rejuvenation Valley wants to worship Rin Xiaoxia. How can we let him take the risk? Tong Ba still refused to back down, saying, "Martial Uncle Nye is wrong. We live in the pugilistic world. How can we not have seen bloody storms? Moreover, it's just a competition of strength and not martial arts. What risk is there to speak of?" Valley Master Nye was a bit hesitant. Previously, he had asked Zhang Xiaohua to fight for Rejuvenation Valley and Nye Qinyu. He was very angry about the incident with Lu Meng last time. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't wash his dirty linen in public, he would have already lost his temper. But now this Tong Ba was actually challenging Zhang Xiaohua in front of him. What was going on? Moreover, the boss of weapon forging sect, Si Yakong, was also present. Could it be that being number one in strength was so important? Valley Master Nye looked unhappily at Tong Ba's arrogant and aggressive manner. Then he looked at Si Yakong, who was sitting on the chair and speaking repeatedly just now, but now looked like he was asleep. He was secretly puzzled. Could it be that boss Si acquiesced to this? He wants to suppress weapon forging sect? Then he looked at Zhun Xian from the corner of his eyes. Damn, that guy is also looking down like a Buddha. Could it be that he also saw through Boss C's thoughts and is too embarrassed to speak? But Boss C's weapon forging sect is already ahead above weapon forging sect. Why is there a need to do this? How strange. Just as he was about to ask again, Tong Ba took a step forward and said, "Martial Uncle Nye, you've been blocking for Rin Xiaoxia and not letting him compete with me. How do you know that he's not willing to compete with me?" Valley Master Nye was stunned. This was the truth. Looking at Zhang Xiaohua's appearance, he didn't seem like a person who was afraid of trouble. Moreover, his strength was obviously greater than Lu Meng's, so he wasn't necessarily afraid of Tong Ba. Tong Ba took out a small booklet from his bosom and said with a smile, "I know this future brother-in-law is interested in refining weapons, but he's not considered a member of our union, so it's not convenient for Martial Uncle Nye to ask. These are some of the refining techniques of my weapon forging sect. If young Hero Run is willing to compete with me, this book will be the prize for the competition." This. Valley Master Nye stared at Si Yakong with a frown. He had heard Nye Qinyu mention this before and knew that Zhang Xiaohua was interested in the weapon forging sect's techniques. But just as Tong Ba said, Zhang Xiaohua wasn't considered a member of the Jade Foundation Alliance, so it wasn't convenient for him to ask weapon forging sect Si Yakong or weapon forging sect Zhun Xian directly. He had to find a chance to ask in private, and this chance would be during the banquet later. At this time, Tong Ba actually placed the weapon forging sect's techniques in front of him, catching Valley Master Nye off guard. Valley Master Nye thought for a moment and looked at Zhun Xian, saying Rin Xiaoxia wanted to use Lu Meng's booklet as the prize to teach him a lesson. He might not just want to see the weapon forging sect's techniques. Martial Nephew Tong is thinking too much. Hee. Valley Master Nye was also an old fox. Since he didn't have anything on him, of course he wouldn't admit it. It wasn't a good habit to pry into the secrets of other sections. Soon after, he smiled and said, "Since Martial Nephew Tong is so well prepared, I'll have little you ask if Rin Xiaoxia is also interested in this competition. If he has anything to say, I'll immediately reply to Martial Nephew Tong. What do you say, Big Brother C?" Si Yakong was forced to express his stance. He could only open his eyes and smile, saying, "It's all because of the competitive spirit of the younger generation. Weren't we the same back then? Let them do as they please. Rin Xiaoxia is only half an outsider anyways. The goodies don't flow into the fields of outsiders." Valley Master Nye could only nod. Thus, everyone skipped over this matter and began to discuss Rejuvenation Valley's medicinal pills in detail. The next day, Zhang Xiaohua was bewildered when she heard Nye Qinyu's message. Why compete in strength for no reason? She had a pile of things she hadn't learned yet. Putting aside the art of pill refinement, that Crimson Flame pill was still waiting for her to refine, and she didn't seem to have much confidence in refining it yet. Even the rabbit talisman needed to be comprehended in a hurry. Oh right, there was also the incantation for concealing one's cultivation in spirit guidance. She was just about to refuse when she heard Nye Qinyu say with a smile, "Moreover, Senior Marshal Brother Tong has even taken out the classics of the weapon forging sect for this competition as a prize. Big Brother Run. Haven't you always wanted to look at the methods of weapon refinement first? If you can win against Senior Marshal Brother Tong, won't you be able to learn openly? Zhang Xiaohua smiled wryly. She had already obtained the jade slip of the weapon forging sect. Who would care about his martial way weapon refinement methods? However, if there wasn't such a prize, he would have refused. Now that the other party had come knocking with a prize, was there a need for her to refuse? Moreover, Zhang Xiaohua frowned and said, Little fish nya, weapon forging sex Tongba is obviously stronger than weapon forging sex Lu Meng, but how much stronger is he? Nye Qinyu smiled and said, I only know that it's not much, but how much do I pay attention to? However, Father said last night that it's a few hundred kilograms of strength. A few hundred kilograms? Zhang Xiaohua frowned even more. A few hundred kilograms of strength was naturally unattainable for ordinary people, but to Zhang Xiaohua, it was really too light. This is strange. Lu Meng's strength can't even lift my weapon. I'm sure Tongba also knows this. With such strength, how could he bring himself to be humiliated? Zhang Xiaohua said, Yes, Big Brother Run is right. Nye Qinyu also explained, Father said this yesterday. Who would give away their sect's secret method of weapon refinement without a reason? Even if it's an ordinary method, it's still confidential. There must be something fishy about this. Zhang Xiaohua said, However, what did Uncle Nye say? Nye Qinyu nodded and said, Father thought so too, but he couldn't get anything out of him. During the banquet last night, Senior Uncle C still kept his mouth shut. Therefore, Father asked you to go with the flow and see what's going on. Zhang Xiaohua said with a grin, Of course. Since it's a piece of meat that's delivered to my doorstep, why wouldn't I try it? Moreover, he didn't ask me to bet anything, so I won't bet anything. Even if Senior Brother Tong wins, I won't lose anything, right? Bah, Nye Qinyu couldn't help but spit and said, Father even asked you to bet something with that elixir of yours. You're good. Try to gain something without risking anything. Zhang Xiaohua said with an innocent face, I was refining elixirs in Rejuvenation Valley and didn't provoke anyone. They came to stir up trouble and said I'm stingy? How about I don't agree to it? Nye Qinyu covered her mouth and snickered. All right, you're always doing this kind of business anyway, and there are always people who are willing to be suckers like you. Speaking of this, Nye Qinyu suddenly exclaimed, Oh, that's right. I haven't given you the 20 taels of gold you got in the peach forest outside the valley. Father urged me last time, so I forgot about it. Then she looked at Zhang Xiaohua strangely and said, Big Brother Run, did you forget about it? Zhang Xiaohua said with an honest face, No, how could I forget? Then why didn't you ask me for it? Are you a little embarrassed? Alas, look at me, I forgot about it. No, just take it. When the time comes, I'll give you a little more profit. Bah, Nye Qinyu almost spat on Zhang Xiaohua's face. So this was what this fellow was thinking. Zhang Xiaohua looked at Nye Qinyu and smiled. Then what's Uncle Nye's arrangement? When and where will the competition be held? Nye Qinyu said, If you agree, we'll have the competition at Rejuvenation Valley's martial arts hall tonight. When the time comes, all the leaders of our Jade Foundation Alliance will appear. Hee. Other than the competition held every 2 years, it's been a long time since I've seen the Uncle Masters and Uncle Masters. Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat, and he asked, Your Jade Foundation Alliance is so close? You even have to compete between the various sects? That's right. The Yuli Alliance is basically a sect that has been passed down for generations and has a history of over 1,000 years. There have been changes throughout the years. In the early years, there were a few sects that were destroyed. However, as long as it's possible, they would rejoin the alliance. Father, you've been friends with the other Uncle Masters since you were young. Therefore, the disciples of our sects are all familiar with each other. Otherwise, why would I have said that Father would be able to obtain the weapon refining sect's weapon refining technique that day? Zhang Xiaohua smiled. What's the difference between this and a large sect? Nye Qinyu said in all seriousness, Of course, there's a big difference. Everyone has different cultivation techniques, and the projects they manage are different as well. If it's a sect, How tiring would it be to be a sect master? Zhang Xiaohua said, perhaps you were already a sect a few thousand years ago. Nie Qinyu shook his head. I don't know about that. All right, let's not talk about it. Let's hurry up and refine the pills. Father knows that you're busy tonight, so he asked me to bring fewer herbs over. Huh? How did Uncle Nian know that I'd definitely be there tonight? Just like you? It's a waste not to take advantage of the situation. How could I not go? Uncle Nia really knows me well. At night, the candles were burning brightly. In the manner of Rejuvenation Valley, in an open-air courtyard towards the west, candles as thick as an arm and torches lit up the courtyard brightly. Right in the middle was a spacious area with a row of tables placed on both sides. There was already wine and food on the tables, and the disciples of Rejuvenation Valley were placing other things on the tables. Come and read more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 474. By the time Zhang Xiaohua arrived at the courtyard under Nie Qinyu's guidance, a sumptuous feast was already placed on the main table and the two sides of the table. The leaders of the Jade Foundation Alliance were already seated. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua and Nie Qinyu, everyone stood up and came forward to greet them. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't be bothered to follow Nie Qinyu's small steps forward. She quickened her pace and bowed. Seniors, my apologies, my apologies. I've made you wait for so long. I've learned a thing or two from Lady Nye just now. I'm late. Si Yakong and the others didn't treat Zhang Xiaohua as a junior and returned the greeting. This old man is Si Yakong of Weapon Forging Sect. Rin Xiaoxia, you're too humble. You've lent a helping hand at the site of injustice and saved Rejuvenation Valley. We're all grateful, but we were afraid that our enemies wouldn't let this matter rest and would cause trouble to us. That's why we haven't come to thank you, Xiaoxia. Now that we've met, the first thing I'd like to say to you is thanks. Zhang Xiaohua now knew the relationships between the various sects in the Jade Foundation Alliance and didn't feel that Si Yakong was interfering with Rejuvenation Valley's affairs. She smiled. Valley Lord Nye has already thanked me countless times and even let me see the pill formula. I've already recouped my costs. You don't have to say that. Besides, I don't even dare to listen to Lady Nye talk about pills anymore. Hearing Zhang Xiaohua's words, Si Yakong was taken aback. He then laughed heartily. Rin Xiaoxia is indeed a straightforward person. Come, let me introduce you to Xiaoxia. With that, he introduced everyone. Zhang Xiaohua bowed and said, I've heard so much about you. As for how much she had heard, only he knew. When she saw the short Tong Ba, Zhang Xiaohua was surprised. Looking at this skinny person, how could he be the strongest person in the Jade Foundation Alliance? Tong Ba smiled and cupped his hands. Rin Xiaoxia, I've long heard Lu Meng praising you to the heavens. Now that I've seen you, you're indeed extraordinary. Later on, I'll have to ask Xiaoxia to teach me a lot. Let me see Xiaoxia's divine power. As he spoke, he looked around Zhang Xiaohua with disappointment in his eyes. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned for a moment before she understood. She smiled and said, I've also heard that Senior Brother Tong is the #1 divine power in our alliance. That's exactly what I want to see. Seeing this, Valley Master Nye laughed and said, All right, you two heroes cherish each other. Let's have a good chat later. For now, please take a seat. When everyone heard this, they all returned to their seats. Zhang Xiaohua also sat next to Valley Head Nye's table. Valley Head Nye looked at Zhang Xiaohua next to him and said, Nephew Rin, you've been to Rejuvenation Valley for several months and have visited most of the places in the valley. You've never been to this training ground, right? Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, That's right. Uncle Nye's place is so rich in medicinal herbs and pill recipes that I've even forgotten to return. How could I have the energy to wander around? Valley Head Nye shook his head and said, In the pugilistic world, martial arts is still the most important thing. Pills and the like are only supplementary. You can't neglect the essentials and focus on trifles. Zhang Xiaohua knew that these were heartfelt words and nodded with a smile. Not long after, the banquet began. Everyone raised their cups and chatted and laughed. Ma Fuhu and Zui Siqing, the two younger ones, even came over from time to time to drink a few sips with Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua didn't really like drinking. However, this 100-flower wine from Rejuvenation Valley was indeed delicious, and the alcohol taste wasn't too strong. Furthermore, Nie Qinyu had traveled with Zhang Xiaohua all the way here, and the attentive girl already knew Zhang Xiaohua's taste. She especially instructed her disciple to pour a particularly light wine for Zhang Xiaohua. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua gladly raised her cup. The most amazing thing was that these people only talked about romance and interesting things in the pugilistic world. They didn't ask about Zhang Xiaohua's situation in Beidou school, nor did they ask about the reason why he went to spread the incense religion. This made Zhang Xiaohua's impression of the Yuli alliance improve. After more than 3 rounds of wine, there were only 5 dishes. Si Yakong cleared his throat and said, "Everyone, the competition in our alliance was just held last year. It hasn't been this lively for a long time. Furthermore, it was also at this training ground in Rejuvenation Valley that our weapon forging sect disciple, Tong Ba, obtained the title of #1 in divine strength in the Yuli alliance." Oh, this title. At this point, he turned to ask Zhen Xian, 4th Master Zhen, how many years has our weapon forging sect held this title? Zhen Xian pursed his lips and said, "Boss C, how would I know? This is the reputation of your weapon forging sect. If you don't remember it yourself, why do you want us to remember it for you?" With that, he angrily drank a cup of wine. Si Yakong smiled and looked around at the crowd. This disciple of mine has always been very competitive. When he heard that there was someone stronger than him, he kept looking for me, wanting to compete with Ren Xiaoxia in terms of physical strength. Of course, our weapon forging sect has always made a living by forging weapons. To put bluntly, we are blacksmiths. In terms of martial arts, he definitely can't beat Ren Xiaoxia. Needless to say, but in terms of physical strength, I think that Tong Ba might be able to compete with Ren Xiaoxia. So I nodded in agreement. Also, I heard that Ren Xiaoxia is interested in weapon forging, so I took out one of our sect's secret weapon forging manuals as the prize for this competition. If Ren Xiaoxia can win against my disciple, this manual will be given to Ren Xiaoxia. Also, if Ren Xiaoxia has any questions while reading it, you can ask our weapon forging sect. I guarantee that we will answer all your questions. Tong Ba had already said this yesterday, and Zhang Xiaohua had also heard it from Ye Qinyu. But today, Si Yakong said it again as the head of weapon forging sect. This kind of sincerity made Zhang Xiaohua feel a little strange. That's right, she wasn't touched, but a little strange. There seemed to be a little. As the saying goes, there is no such thing as a free lunch in this world. What was the purpose behind this secret weapon forging manual? Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but secretly pinch her chin and think to herself. However, when he saw Valley Master Nye's somewhat astonished expression, he thought in his heart, even Valley Master Nye doesn't know. How mysterious. However, all my things are in my money pouch, and I'm not afraid of you thinking about it. Let's see what you have in store. At this time, she heard Si Yakong say, however, this competition was proposed by our weapon forging sect. We didn't ask for Ren Xiaoxia's permission in advance, so Ren Xiaoxia doesn't need to prepare any prizes. He just needs to participate in the competition. When Valley Master Nye heard this, he opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but after trying a few times, he didn't know what to say. He looked at Zhang Xiaohua and didn't say anything. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua came out from behind the table and said with a smile, "Since Sect Master C is so generous, I won't stand on ceremony. To be honest, I don't have anything valuable on me, and I don't have anything to use as a stake. Sect Master C's arrangement is very suitable." When Ye Qinyu heard this, she lowered her head and laughed secretly. When Tong Ba saw Zhang Xiaohua walking down the stage, he also jumped out and cupped his hands. "Then I'll have to ask Ren Xiaoxia to give me some pointers." Zhang Xiaohua returned the greeting. "Likewise, Senior Brother Tong, please show mercy." Following which, he asked, "I wonder how the competition in our alliance is to test our strength." Tong Ba smiled and said, "Firstly, it's to see who can lift more stone weights. Secondly, it's to see who can pull who with a rope. However, I heard that Junior Brother Liu had a new competition method with you. Why don't we use your long sword? Zhang Xiaohua pondered for a moment and said, All right, but I don't have my long sword with me. Senior Brother Tong, please wait a moment. I'll go get it. Tong Ba smiled. Let the disciples go get it. Rin Xiaoxia still needs to drink a few more cups. Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, I'll go by myself. I'll drink later. Seeing that Nie Qinyu was about to get up, Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and signaled for her to go. Then, she turned and left. When she left the courtyard and came to a dark place, she turned around and burrowed into the ground. She came to the attic in the peach forest and took the long sword. Then, she returned to the door with the long sword and came in with a smile. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua had returned, Ing Zhizhu laughed heartily and said, Nephew Rin is really able to keep his composure. When I saw that he didn't say anything a moment ago, I thought that he didn't want to compete with Martial Nephew Tong. But now that I see that he left in a hurry and came back in a hurry, I realize that he also has a competitive spirit in his heart. So Xiqing nodded, Yes, young people should be like this. Only Valley Master Nye and Nie Qinyu were shocked. They knew where the long sword was and how far the attic was from here. Seeing that the long sword in Zhang Xiaohua's hand emitted a dark luster under the bright lights of the martial arts practice field, not only Tong Ba, but also Si Yakong and Jin Xian had a fanatical look in their eyes. Zhang Xiaohua saw this and couldn't help but think, Oh, I forgot that the weapon forging sect and the weapon forging sect make a living by refining weapons. They must have seen countless materials in the world. My long sword is so heavy that it must have attracted their attention. Of course, Lu Ming may have neglected it, but when he tells the master of the weapon forging sect, he will, careless. However, since things had come to this, there was nothing to regret. He also wanted to know what the long sword was. Sure enough, Tong Ba looked back at Si Yakong and walked to Zhang Xiaohua. Is this the long sword that made junior brother Lu Ming lose? I think Ren Xiaoxia can hold it easily. Why don't you let me try lifting it? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and handed the long sword to Tong Ba. Of course, if senior brother Tong can raise both hands above your head, I will lose this round. What do you think? Her words were very generous and also looked down on others. However, with Lu Ming as an example, Tong Ba didn't dare to look down on her and only nodded, Let's do as Ren Xiaoxia says. After saying that, he stretched out both hands to take the long sword. Zhang Xiaohua saw that he had already gathered his strength and reminded him, Be careful, senior brother Tong. I'm going to let go. Tong Ba held his breath and didn't dare to speak. He nodded repeatedly. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua let go of her hand, and the long sword fell into Tong Ba's hands. At this moment, the entire arena was silent. Only the crackling sound of the torches could be heard. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the small long sword fell straight to the ground as soon as it fell into Tong Ba's hands. Tong Ba's face was already flushed red, but he still couldn't stop it. Seeing that his hands and feet were about to be smashed, Tong Ba quickly let go and jumped to the side. With a muffled sound, it was as if the entire arena shook and the long sword fell to the ground. Chapter 475. Tong Ba didn't know what to do. When he heard Lu Ming's rumor, he thought it was exaggerated. Perhaps Lu Ming was just trying to cover up his failure. How could there be something so heavy in this world? However, his master's eyes lit up when he heard the rumor. There were all sorts of strange things in this world. The weaponsmith sect made a living by forging weapons. The books in the sect naturally recorded all sorts of strange things. Tong Ba didn't know much, but Si Yakong knew. Even so, according to Si Yakong's estimation, even if it was a long sword or any other weapon, as long as it wasn't a huge hammer, Tong Ba wouldn't be unable to lift it. That was why Tong Ba was so confident in challenging Zhang Xiaohua. The long sword wasn't eye-catching. It was obviously a sword embryo. Tong Ba thought that it was impossible for him to not be able to lift it with his strength. Unexpectedly, he couldn't even catch it. Naturally, he turned around to look at his master who had promised him that he wouldn't embarrass himself. Si Yakong was even more surprised. He didn't expect this result either. He looked at Jin Xian, who was also surprised. Then, they stood up and walked into the arena. Zhang Xiaohua didn't seem surprised to see them. Wasn't the purpose of this competition to draw out his long sword? If the two master blacksmiths didn't come out, Zhang Xiaohua would really doubt her own intelligence. The two of them walked into the arena and cupped their hands. Ren Xiaoxia, your weapon is so heavy. We are very curious. Can you let us take a closer look? Zhang Xiaohua nodded. Feel free to take a look. Jin Xian waved his hand, and a disciple outside the arena brought a torch over. Zhang Xian took it and placed it on the long sword on the ground to take a closer look. At the banquet, Valley Master Nya seemed to have understood Si Yakong's intentions. He looked a little displeased. Zhang Xiaohua was his guest and wasn't an outsider. Since Si Yakong wanted to see the long sword, it wasn't a big deal to tell him about it. There was no need to make things so complicated. Why did they have to compete in strength and even reveal the secrets of the weaponsmith sect? However, Si Yakong was the big brother of the Yuli Alliance after all. It wasn't appropriate for him to say anything in front of Si Yakong, so he could only leave this grudge for later. Si Yakong and Jin Xian held their torches and crouched on the ground. They approached the sword and looked at it carefully. Sometimes they rubbed it gently with their hands, sometimes they flicked the sword with their fingers, and sometimes they whispered something. However, as time passed, the two of them didn't look enlightened. Instead, they looked even more suspicious. Zhang Xiaohua looked at them with a smile. She wanted to ask them about it, but judging from their expressions, they probably didn't know the origin of the sword. So, she turned to look at Tong Ba. When Tong Ba saw Zhang Xiaohua looking at him, he couldn't help but blush. Although he had an ulterior motive and this competition was just a prelude, he couldn't even handle the other party's weapon. That was cough cough. He didn't deserve the title of #1 divine strength. Zhang Xiaohua was about to speak when the two old scholars stood up. Their eyes were filled with confusion. Si Yakong frowned and asked, Ren Xiaoxia, this old man wants to ask you. Where did you get this thing? Oh, this long sword. This question was a little reckless, but it also seemed very intimate. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, I got on a deserted island overseas. Deserted island? Overseas? Si Yakong was a little surprised. He quickly asked, Nephew, can you tell me the exact location? Well, she skipped Xiaoxia and changed it to nephew. This was almost a trap. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, he took the opportunity to say, Uncle Si, of course, the ship encountered a storm, and this nephew was blown into the sea. However, I don't know the exact location. Later on, I was lucky enough to return to land, but I forgot to ask around. Si Yakong was very satisfied with Zhang Xiaohua calling him uncle. Of course, he wouldn't doubt his answer. He turned to look at Jin Xian. Jin Xian thought for a while and asked, Nephew Run, if it's convenient, can you tell me what the longsword looked like when you saw it? Oh, was it flat on the ground? Or was it stuck in the ground? Or, wow, he's calling himself uncle too. Zhang Xiaohua thought to herself. After thinking for a while, Zhang Xiaohua said bluntly, Uncle Zhen, when I saw the longsword that day, it wasn't even on the ground. It wasn't on the ground? Not only were the two grandmasters surprised, but everyone else also exclaimed. However, there was obvious joy in the eyes of the two grandmasters. Then this longsword, Jin Xian asked impatiently. Zhang Xiaohua looked at everyone and said, When I saw the sword, it was above a pool of magma. It was just lying there flat. There seemed to be something invisible below. At that time, I was scared to death. Fire condensation technique? Si Yakong and Jin Xian exclaimed in unison. Valley Master Nya and the others were shocked to see the two lose their composure. They all came forward and asked, What's the fire condensation technique? Si Yakong and Jin Xian were a little embarrassed. It seemed to be the first time they lost their composure in front of everyone. Si Yakong coughed twice and said, The fire condensation technique is a refining technique that has been lost for thousands of years. It uses fire to condense raw materials into weapons. Oh, I see. Everyone nodded when they heard that. It was true. Anyone who suddenly heard about a technique that had been lost for thousands of years would have such a reaction. Sure enough, Si Yakong and Jin Xian pulled Zhang Xiaohua aside and asked her about this and that. They inquired about the situation of the long sword clearly. However, so what if they saw it with their own eyes? If the refining technique of the immortal Tao could be learned with just one's eyes, how could the refining technique be lost? The two of them were addicted to listening and then prepare to leave. Zhang Xiaohua was not happy. You asked me for so long, and now you're going to leave me alone after you've had your fill? She immediately grabbed the two of them and asked, Uncles, after looking at it for so long, I still want to ask, what is my longsword made of? How can it be refined into a real longsword? Si Yakong glanced at Zhen Xian. Zhen Xian said awkwardly, Nephew Run, it's not that I don't want to hide it from you, but I really don't know either. I've already discussed it with Brother C in detail just now. The things in this world are very magical. If we're talking about the heaviest thing, it's nothing more than black iron. It's only the size of a fist, and it's 10 times heavier than a normal piece of iron. If your longsword is made of black iron, it's only 10 times heavier than a normal iron sword. You can't let Nephew Tong be unable to handle it. Moreover, although black iron is heavy, it's not too difficult to refine into a weapon. Si Yakong also interrupted, In my opinion, your longsword was still in the process of being refined that day. Since the fire condensation method has long been lost, and there aren't many people in the wasteland you're in, you can naturally infer how long this longsword has been refined above the magma. If it can't be successfully forged after such a shocking amount of time, how can I be confident that it can be refined into a real longsword? Moreover, weapons rely on nothing more than sharpness and weight. Nephew's longsword has no edge, but just based on its weight, who can withstand it? Zhang Xiaohua was silent. Didn't she use the weight of this sword to bully people all the way here? At this time, Si Yakong said again, Only the material of this longsword is unknown to me and Zhen Laosi. If we really want to make a far-fetched guess, perhaps some legendary black iron might be similar to your longsword. Black iron? Zhang Xiaohua was surprised. It was the first time she heard this name. She couldn't help but ask, What's the origin of this black iron? Si Yakong looked at Zhen Xian and smiled. Well, we'll talk about this later. I don't think you're done competing with my disciple yet. With that, he returned to the banquet with Zhen Xian, hand in hand. That, Zhang Xiaohua reached out, wanting to pull them back. Was there a need to continue the competition? However, before she could reach out, they had already returned to the banquet, whetting Zhang Xiaohua's appetite. Seeing that his master had left, Tong Bao walked to the front of the longsword and said, Rin Xiaoxia, as you said just now, if I can raise this longsword above my head, I'll win. Zhang Xiaohua looked at him. No matter how she looked at him, he didn't look like someone who could raise a longsword. She could only nod and say, Please enlighten me, Senior Brother Tong. Tong Ba chuckled and cupped his fists at the people around him. He took a horse stance and took a deep breath. Then he stretched out both hands to hold the longsword. Then, with a loud shout, he actually lifted the longsword from the ground. The people of the Jade Foundation Alliance cheered loudly. Then, Tong Ba mustered all his strength. The muscles on his arms twitched as he forced himself to raise the longsword. Seeing this, the disciples who had finished drinking also cheered him on. Under Tong Ba's gnashing teeth, the longsword slowly moved upwards. However, his trembling legs betrayed his bottom line. By the time he raised the longsword to his chest, he couldn't raise it no matter what. His face was so red that it looked like blood was about to drip out. Then, a hint of unwillingness flashed in Tong Ba's eyes. He let go of the longsword, and just like before, it fell to the ground with a clang. Tong Ba helplessly cupped his fists and said, Rin Xiaoxia is indeed a god power. This foolish brother, this foolish brother is truly impressed. From now on, I won't dare to call myself the Alliance's #1 god power. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned and said, Senior Brother Tong's words are strange. This one isn't a member of your alliance. Why would you call yourself the #1 god power? Tong Ba smiled bitterly and said, #1 god power, #1 god power. I can't even lift Xiaoxia's weapon. How can I call myself the #1 god power? After saying that, he looked very dejected. He took out the small booklet from his chest and handed it to Zhang Xiaohua. He said, Rin Xiaoxia, this is what you deserve. Please accept it. However, it contains the secrets of my weapon forging sect. Xiaoxia, please keep it a secret and only use it for yourself. Don't pass it on to anyone else. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to come to the weapon forging sect and find me or my master. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the small booklet and really wanted to take it. However, she still refused and said, how can I accept this? Chapter 476. Nie Qianyu, who was watching intently at the side, was laughing in her heart. She had personally witnessed how Zhang Xiaohua tricked Lu Ming and knew that Zhang Xiaohua really wanted to know how to refine weapons. Therefore, this booklet from the weapon casting sect catered to her interests. How could he not want to get his hands on it? Tong Ba shook his head and said, No, apart from the importance of this booklet, it's also a prize in itself. Xiaoxia deserves it. It's just that I'm a frog in a well and overestimated my abilities. Xiaoxia, please don't take it to heart. Zhang Xiaohua chuckled and said half-heartedly, You're welcome, you're welcome. Senior Brother Tong's divine power is also amazing. Didn't you just say that you've been the #1 divine power for many years? As she spoke, she reached out to take the booklet. However, when she used her strength, she realized that Tong Ba had no intention of letting go. She had no choice but to use more strength in her hand and said, I'm very envious of your sect's refining techniques. I want to see how this weapon is refined. I'll definitely keep it a secret and won't divulge the contents of this booklet. Zhang Xiaohua thought, I've already complimented you and practically swore. Are you still not going to give it to me? However, when she used more strength, wow, Tong Ba still didn't let go. Zhang Xiaohua could only look straight at Tong Ba and smiled. I still have to thank Senior Brother Tong for your guidance. If there's a chance, I'd like to exchange pointers with you. Great. She had even threatened him, and he still wasn't letting go. At this moment, Si Yakong, who was sitting at the banquet table behind Zhang Xiaohua, spoke. Nephew Run, this booklet is a small token of our sect's appreciation. Please accept it. Also, I have a presumptuous request, but I don't know if it's appropriate to say it. Before he finished speaking, Zhang Xiaohua staggered. Nonsense. Tong Ba had already let go. She was listening to sect leader Si and was caught off guard. Looking at the booklet in her hand, Zhang Xiaohua secretly complained, I knew there's no such thing as a free meal in this world. Look, the show is about to start. Io, that's not right. Didn't I show them my sword just now? Do they have other requests? Don't tell me you want my sword. However, since she had already gotten the booklet, it was impossible for her to give it to Tong Ba. Tong Ba took advantage of the time when Zhang Xiaohua was in a daze and walked back to the banquet. Sigh, old master, since you know it's a presumptuous request, then it's best that you don't say it. Since you said it in front of me, how can I not let you say it? Zhang Xiaohua looked at the crowd and cupped her hands. Thank you for your kind intentions, sect leader Si. However, if it's something too difficult, please forgive me for not daring to casually agree. Hearing Zhang Xiaohua call him sect leader Si Yakong smiled bitterly. The distance I tried so hard to pull apart has been pulled apart again. However, if I don't express my goodwill first, it's really hard for him to open his mouth. Beside them, Valley Master Nie was also puzzled. He really didn't understand why this big brother of weapon forging sect was doing this today. He looked at the two of them and smiled. Nephew Rin isn't an outsider anymore. Big brother Si, if there's anything you want to say, it's better to say it first. Your way of doing things seems like you're acting first and reporting later. It's no wonder that Nephew Run is a little reluctant. Seeing that Valley Master Nie had stepped forward to be the peacemaker, Zhang Xiaohua nodded slightly, but didn't say anything. Beside them, Nie Qianyu was a little anxious. She had called Si Yakong uncle since she was young. Seeing how Uncle Si was so generous, it must be something important. It wasn't as simple as looking at the long sword as she had thought. She understood Zhang Xiaohua's temper. She hated being schemed against the most. Oh, of course, she also loved to scheme against others. Looking at his expression, he was a little unhappy. Nie Qianyu hurriedly said, Uncle Si, Father's words make sense. You're an elder, so it's not convenient for me to say anything. However, Big Brother Ren has always been a chivalrous person. If you want him to get rid of the evil and help the weak, just say the word and he'll do it. Think about it. I was just a weak girl back then, and Big Brother Ren was just a passerby. Just as Nie Chinyu was about to finish her sentence, Si Yakong said in a clear voice, "Little you, you're right. Sai, this matter is rather important. I've thought about it over and over again before doing this. If I've embarrassed Nephew Run, I'll apologize." After he finished speaking, he left the banquet and went forward to bow. Zhang Xiaohua's words just now had already provoked public anger. She didn't dare to let the old man bow at this time. She hurriedly went forward to support him and said, "Uncle C, listen to what you're saying. I'm just informing you first. If it's really too difficult, don't mention it. I don't want to make it difficult for me to agree. If you think I can do it, just say it. I won't hesitate." Si Yakong was still hesitant. He said, "This matter is indeed very difficult. I'm afraid you won't agree." "Gosh," Zhang Xiaohua cried in her heart. She said, "Since Uncle C knows it's difficult, then don't mention it, okay?" Si Yakong's face was full of disappointment. He nodded and said, "Sai, okay. Since you said so, I won't embarrass myself. Just pretend I didn't say it." When everyone heard this, they all knew that this was a very difficult matter. Zhang Xiaohua might not be able to do it, so it was better not to mention it. Everyone's face would be better. Only Nie Chinyu rolled her eyes and said with a smile, "Uncle C, I'm a little curious. Why don't you tell Big Brother in this? Why don't you tell me?" Si Yakong looked at Nie Chinyu, then at Zhang Xiaohua. He opened his mouth, but still shook his head and said, "Sai, forget it, forget it. I might as well not say it." Seeing the old man so dejected, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't bear it and said with a smile, "Since Miss Nie asked, Uncle C, you should tell her. She's always been curious. If you don't tell her, she'll be thinking about it all night. She might even harass you in the middle of the night." "Ha ha!" Everyone laughed. Nie Chinyu spat and said, "How would I know how to harass you?" She stopped halfway through her sentence. Everyone's expression was strange. Zhang Xiaohua's expression was even more unnatural. "Why do you have to drag me into this?" Si Yakong also laughed out loud. Seeing this, he said, "Actually, thinking about it, it is indeed somewhat difficult. This involves Nephew Rin's sect, the Big Dipper sect. I think Nephew Rin can't make the decision himself." Seeing that everyone was at a loss, Si Yakong coughed and said, "I'm sure everyone still remembers the arena that second brother Nies set up at the entrance of Rejuvenation Valley Manor a few months ago. Of course, we didn't know. In the last round, Nephew Rin showed his prowess in the arena and knocked 4 people out of the arena. He even took 2 lives because of it. When this happened, this old man and a few other members of the Alliance weren't present. As for the specific details, we only heard it from second brother Nye later." Everyone was puzzled. What did this have to do with the current situation? Si Yakong continued, "I'm sure everyone knows the details better than I do. However, Nephew Rin's 4 opponents were strange. When second brother Nye told me about it, he only said that they knew a set of combined attacks, and that it was a formation that the 5 of them used together. This shocked me greatly. I'm sure second brother Nye has forgotten that our weapon forging sect had a set of lost 5 elements die in formation. Not only can it be used to forge weapons, but it can also be used to defend against enemies." Zhang Xiaohua's expression was very interesting when she heard this. 5 elements die in formation. Valley Master Nya almost cried out. He trembled and said, "Boss C, don't deceive me. I know that your weapon forging sect had this formation thousands of years ago, but it's been lost for a long time. Those few little thieves on the arena made a few gestures. Was that weapon forging sect's secret technique? What do you know?" Si Yakong blew his beard and glared at him. "Do you think I'm talking nonsense? Don't you remember how I asked about it in detail? Aren't you annoyed?" This Valley Master Nya looked embarrassed and said, "Big brother, I really didn't expect it to be so serious. I thought that it was just a set of 5 people's combined attacks. Atonement, atonement." However, a bitter smile appeared on his face soon after. Nonsense, the 5 elements die in formation sounded like a very powerful thing. On that day, There were only 4 people on the stage, and they had already beaten the others down. It could be seen how powerful the real 5 elements die-in formation was. Of course, it was possible for Rejuvenation Valley to beg Zhang Xiaohua to help, but it would be extremely difficult for her to pass on this formation to you. This was not even comparable to Rejuvenation Valley's pill recipes. Although Rejuvenation Valley's pill recipes were precious, many of them were collected. He only had a small portion of them, and he couldn't refine them himself. If he wanted Zhang Xiaohua to help him refine them, he naturally had to show her. However, this formation might be the only one in Beta School in the world. It was definitely a secret technique. How could she take it out so easily? Valley Master Nya looked at Zhang Xiaohua and said to Si Yakong, Big Brother C's request is really making things difficult for Nephew Ren. Even if Nephew Ren wants to teach, he still has to see if the elders of Beidu School are willing. That's right. Now that I think about it, I just said that I had some fantasies and was eager to get this 5 elements formation from Nephew Ren. I'm really a little obsessed. I'm ashamed. Seeing Si Yakong's loneliness and disappointment, the expression on Zhang Xiaohua's face became more and more interesting. He really didn't expect Weapon Forging Sect to be after the 5 elements formation. When Nye Qinyu mentioned it to him yesterday, he felt that there must be something to it. Just now, he thought it was a long sword, but after thinking about it, he didn't expect it to be this formation. To be honest, this 5 elements formation was one of the most common formations he knew. He only needed to cultivate a little to become proficient in it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to break it so easily in the arena. However, was it appropriate for him to give away something he regarded as trash so easily while others treated it as a treasure? Si Yakong had already given up on this idea. He felt that he had been carried away by his enthusiasm a few days ago. He smiled and said, Let's go. Everyone, please take your seats. It's rare for us to taste Rejuvenation Valley's 100 Flowers wine. We must enjoy ourselves to the fullest. Everyone responded and was about to take their seats again. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua said in a clear voice, It's not like I can't consider Uncle C's request. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.